This video is long. I go full nerd and express my ideas quickly and with passion. Most of these ideas were coming to me as I was speaking. I want this video to spark discussion, positive debate, and an exchange of healthy ideas in the comments section below. My ideas are not set in stone. This is simply a blueprint. There is still room for details to be fleshed out and expanded on or changed. Once I appear on screen, you are then watching a video created before the announcement of Halloween Kills and Halloween Ends. Any similar ideas in this video are purely coincidence. Welcome to the Halloween 2018 sequel concept idea video. Wow, that's a mouthful. Listen, before we get started, there's a few things I want to go over just to make sure we're all on the same page. Number one, this sequel idea is in no way an endorsement on my part for a sequel to Halloween 2018. Quite frankly, I didn't enjoy the movie enough where I felt like it needed a sequel. Nonetheless, this is a business and the movie did really well, so obviously we do know they are making not only one sequel, but two sequels, Halloween Kills and Halloween Ends, coming out October 2020 and October 2021. Number two, I'm approaching this idea from the perspective of, if Jason Blum came to me and said, "Dave, we want you to write and direct the sequel to Halloween 2018, what do you think we should do that would give us the best probability of success?" And this is what I think they should do. Now, there's three types of success. Well, actually, there's more than that, but the three big ones are box office success, which is what the studios really care about, critical success, which is your movie pundits and critics and film insiders, and then, of course, fan success. I'm approaching this idea from the perspective that I want to deliver something for the fans that they can be proud of, that they can appreciate, and that will translate into repeat viewing, which should translate into big box office dollars. Number three, I'm approaching this idea from the perspective of that this would be the last Halloween film as we know it. That doesn't mean that they don't reboot the series 10 years from now, but as we know it in this current timeline with Laurie Strode connected to the 1978 film, this is the last Halloween as we know it. Number four, I'm not going to pretend like the 2018 film doesn't exist. Although I didn't enjoy that movie as much as I was hoping, and maybe as much as some of you did, I have to honor that film because it does exist. I'm not going to Rian Johnson, the movie and throw the butcher knife over the shoulder. I have to work with the cards that I was dealt, but that does not mean I'm not going to put my own stamp on things and execute what I believe is a Halloween Michael Myers movie. And last but certainly not least, my sequel concept idea picks up immediately after the end of the 2018 film and happens the same night. Now, that is not because I want to honor the original Halloween 2 from 1981, although I guess it's a nice touch, but that wasn't the intent. The intent is because I feel it is the most logical place to pick up when we are ending the story with this movie. I think it makes the most sense narratively. All right, now that all that's out of the way, let's do this. Hey folks, how you doing? Dave McRae here. The movie begins with a black screen. I need you to really picture this now. Visualize it. Pretend you're back in grade school and you're using your childlike imagination to its full potential. The movie begins with a black screen, and all we hear is wind, the autumn wind. And then we begin to hear the crackling of some fire. Okay, we start to hear the crackling of fire. We know it's fire, and we hear this, and the wind is still kind of there too, and the crackling of the fire is getting louder and louder, but nothing comes on the screen yet except for the date, October 31, 2018. So we know immediately, okay, we're right back to that night. We're right back essentially where we left off, okay? And the crackling of the fire is getting louder and louder, and then as it gets really loud, and we cut in, and all we see is Laurie's house in flames. It is in flames, and the fire department is there with their hoses trying to, you know, spray the fire. And this house is going up. Like, there's no saving this house at all. The fire department has no interest in saving the house. It is a complete and utter write-off. They're just trying to contain the fire so it doesn't spread to the surrounding areas, because obviously there's a forest there, right? So they don't want it to spread to the forest and cause a big forest fire. So they're just trying to contain the fire. And you can see the wind blowing the flames, so the fire department's having a little bit of trouble kind of getting those, you know, flames under control. But, you know, we see shots of wood falling, plastic melting, like really hone in on that this fire is a raging inferno, because it looked like it was about to become a raging inferno at the end of the 2018 film. Well, now, yes, we see it. I mean, this house is like, there's just nothing left. There's just, you know what I mean? Now, there is no music, okay? There is no music for a large portion of the beginning of this movie. All right, because I really want to focus in on the elements, okay? I want you to feel the heat from those flames. I want you to be able to smell the autumn air as you notice that the wind is beginning to pick up, because we didn't really see a lot of that traditional autumn sort of feel and kind of look in the 2018 film. I want you to see some leaves blowing. There's a storm kind of on the horizon, right? Wind is beginning to pick up, which, like I said, is causing some problems for the firefighters. So I really want you to kind of feel the environment that you're in. So I don't want the music to take away from that quite yet. Music's coming, but not yet. We then cut from this scene right into the back of the pickup truck with Laurie, Karen, and Allison. But what ends up happening is, as soon as we cut, we actually cut to the knife that Allison is holding. So the very last shot in Halloween 2018 becomes the very first shot when we go back to that scene. And it's almost like a shot reversal. Now, I'm not suggesting that you actually do reverse the shot, because anytime you reverse a shot that was meant to go forward and you just kind of reverse it kind of to do kind of a trick of the camera, it always looks like it's been reversed. So we would reshoot this. You would absolutely shoot it, you know, the other way. So there they are in the back of the truck, and instead of going like this down to the knife, we start on the knife. Oh, we're right back where we left off, and we come back up to Allison, Karen, and Laurie, and they're in the back of the truck, and they're not saying anything, and Laurie looks disheveled, and she's holding like this, and they're kind of holding on to each other, like, what the fuck is going on here? And then we cut into the cabin of the pickup truck, and we don't see the driver. We just see his hand on the steering wheel, and then we go to the rear view mirror, and we see the driver's eyes look into the rear view mirror, right? He looks into the rear view mirror as if he's looking back at the girls. We can tell that it is a man. We can tell that it is an older man, but we don't know who he is. We can just see his eyes, okay? And at this point, again, there's no music whatsoever. No score has started anywhere at any time. I want to utilize the elements and the feel of the environment right now. I don't want to add any score yet, okay? And the truck zooms down the road. It goes past the camera, and autumn leaves sort of get caught up in its tailwind and move past, you know, the camera in the foreground, and big evergreen trees on either side of the road. Now, it's nighttime, but you can sort of see them, okay? Big evergreen trees on either side of the road sort of sway in the wind, you know, like this. You can definitely tell that there is a change in atmosphere. There is a change in weather, I mean, okay? From the end of the first movie to the beginning of this movie. Right out of the gate in this movie, we can tell that, oh, there is the weather has changed. That traditional Midwest feel and vibe is definitely present at the beginning of this movie. All right? Something's changed, and that's also a metaphor as well. Okay, I'm using that, I'm using the weather changing as symbolism as well, that something has changed here. This isn't over yet. There is a storm, literally and figuratively, on the horizon. okay? It doesn't matter what scene you are in this movie. You can feel the environment. You can feel the autumn Midwest environment, especially when you're outside. It doesn't just, you don't just feel it in this scene. Right? It's right the way through the entire film. So the truck speeds into the emergency area of Haddonfield Memorial Hospital, and the hospital looks relatively the same, right? I mean, some minor changes here or there because it's 40 years later, but it still has that smaller town sort of hospital vibe. It's not a gigantic 10-story hospital that you'd find in like a metropolitan area like Chicago or Toronto or, whatever the case is. It's still got that sort of, that vibe to it. It's Haddonfield Memorial because the logos are also the same as well. So there's the truck in the emergency area. The driver gets out of the truck. We still don't see who he is. We're just seeing his legs, his boots, his torso, okay? And he's helping Allison and Karen get Laurie out of the back of the truck. We just kind of see his shoulder. We know he's helping, right? We can see Allison and Karen and Laurie clear as day, but we only see like the back of the head and the shoulder, and he's kind of there, helping, and Karen and Allison are like, come on, Mom, it's okay. Grandma, it's gonna be okay, or whatever. And Allison sees an empty wheelchair over by the hospital doors. So she goes over, gets the wheelchair, brings it over. They seat Laurie in the wheelchair. As they're wheeling Laurie to the doors, Karen turns back and says, "Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much," right? And then the doors open, they wheel her in, and then the guy, the truck driver, puts, the back of the truck up, and he turns around like this to face the camera, and who is it? None other than the one, the only former sheriff of Haddonfield himself, ladies and germs, Lee Brackett, played by the one, the only Charles Cyphers. Yes, that's right. Charles Cyphers has come back to play Lee Brackett one last time. So that's who it is. And fans would be like, oh shit, that's Lee. That actually is Lee Brackett. That's not somebody pretending to be Lee Brackett playing Lee. No, that's the guy. That's Lee Brackett. It's Charles fucking Cyphers himself. And I don't care if he's got a goatee and a white beard or whatever he has now. He had that, I think, at the 40th anniversary convention when I met him last year. And if he wanted to keep that, keep it. I don't care. It's 40 years later, man. Keep it. We're instantly going to know it's Charles Cyphers. Now, he's long retired, so it might take a bit to get him out of retirement to play this role again. But money. Might do it. You never know. So that's who it is. And he closes the back of the truck. He looks up at the camera like this, and he's not smiling. He's not frowning. He's just watching Karen and Allison wheel Laurie into the hospital. He's watching very intently. And you get the sense by looking at his face that he knows exactly who that is in the wheelchair. He knows that's Laurie Strode. Now, he might not know that is her daughter and her granddaughter, but he certainly knows that's Laurie Strode. And Laurie Strode knows who he is. I mean, obviously, they probably have some sort of relationship. I don't mean that kind of a relationship, but obviously they've known each other over the last 40 years on some level. They've remained close on some level because of Annie, because of the death of Annie. And Laurie probably didn't realize that was, Lee Brackett helping her out of the back of the truck because she's so out of it. I mean, she's hurt, she's, disheveled, she's not thinking straight. She's lost a lot of blood, right? So she knows that somebody has helped her, but she's unaware that it's him. And who knows how long it's been since she's seen him. Maybe they've had a falling out, maybe they haven't. I don't know. I gotta kind of flesh that out a bit. But nonetheless, he's standing there watching as Laurie's being wheeled into the hospital. And it's like, oh shit. Now we cut from that face of Charles Cyphers as Lee Brackett, we cut from that moment back to Laurie's house, which is still up in flames. I mean, the fire department has some of it under control, but because of that autumn wind, they're having some difficulty, kind of getting the upper hand on that, right? So a lot of the house is still up in flames, but we see the wood burning, we see the caution tape going around the trees, right? More cop cars show up. Sheriff Barker gets out of one of the cop cars in his cowboy hat, and he starts asking his deputies, where's Laurie? Like, has anybody found any bodies? what's going on, because remember, the authorities at this point in the game don't even realize that Laurie, Karen, and Allison were actually able to get out alive. For all they know, Laurie, Karen, Allison, Ray, Myers all went up with the house because Karen, Laurie, and Allison were able to get into the back of Brackett's pickup truck before the authorities arrived. So they're putting out the flames, but there's firefighters actually going into the house trying to find, Laurie, and you hear them, Laurie, like, we got a body, we got a body over here, which of course is the body of Ray, right? Because he was actually in the house. He went up with the house, as did Myers. But of course, we kind of know how this is going to go. So they definitely find a body, and all that is kind of taking place. You see the cops talking to each other. You see the commotion in the house. Barker's trying to find out what the fuck is going on, and there's still no music, right? We're really honing in on the elements of the environment here that is before our very eyes. Then we cut back to the hospital. So now we're in the hospital, and we're in one of the rooms, and Laurie is in a bed, and she's hooked up to an IV. She's got some bandages on her. She's got the heart monitor there. Allison and Karen are there as well. They're holding her hand. Laurie looks disheveled. She looks exhausted. I mean, she was absolutely, put through the washing machine, as they say. So Karen and Allison, yeah, they have some, maybe a bandage here, some cuts here, bruise. You can certainly tell that they've been in a fight, but not nearly as bad as Laurie. Now, as Karen and Allison quietly leave the room to go get their mother an apple juice or a water or something, as the door closes behind them and they're sort of out in the hall now, Karen begins to break down. Like, she begins to break down, not overselling it, but she begins to break down because she's realizing, not that she didn't before, but she was in sort of a state of shock. She's lost her husband. And as annoying as the character of Ray was and is, I got peanut butter on my penis, and I was glad to see him die, within the context of the movie, she's lost her husband. So this is tragic for her, and Allison has lost her father. So there's a moment there. We need to see that moment, because if it's never emotionally acknowledged, it just seems really strange. You don't have to overdo it. You don't have to oversell it, but there's a moment there in the hall. Maybe a couple of the nurses sort of, look up because they see her crying or, whatever the case is. But there's a moment that the mother and daughter are having together, and it's an unexpected moment, but it's almost like there's this, there's this moment where they feel safe and secure, within the hospital, where they can let their guard down, and then boom, it hits them, right? So we see that, and as that's sort of happening kind of off in the corner over here, out of focus, we see a doctor in a white coat walk behind them, look at them. We can't see the doctor's face, but we can tell he's looking at them. He pauses. He then turns to Laurie's hospital door, opens it ajar. He's peeking into the room. We can see Laurie in the distance in her bed, right? She doesn't notice. It's not like she looks over. She's completely out of it. Like, she's just resting now, right? And then the camera cuts to inside the room, to the other side of the hospital bed. So Laurie is in the foreground, close up now, and the door is in the background, sort of ajar. And the doctor at the door is blurred out. Laurie is in focus in the foreground. We don't rack focus. We don't pull focus to then switch the focus that Laurie's blurred out and the doctor is in No. We don't do that because we don't want to reveal who the doctor is yet, okay? So then we cut back to behind the doctor as he opens the door. The camera is following the doctor into the room, and he grabs a chair, pulls it up to Laurie's bedside. He sits down like this, and he lifts his head into frame, and it is revealed to be none other than Tommy Doyle, ladies and gentlemen, and not just played by anybody. No. Played by the Brian Andrews, ladies and gentlemen, the same guy that played him as an 8-year-old boy in the original Halloween in 1978. Now, I don't know what Brian Andrews is doing right now. I don't know if he's officially retired. I don't know if he'd want to come back, but money. And a good script might lure, some of these people back. So, It's him. It's not Paul Rudd Tommy Doyle. It is Brian Andrews Tommy Doyle, sitting there at the bedside beside Laurie Strode 40 years later. So anyway, Dr. Doyle sits there beside Laurie Strode, just kind of having some small talk, medical stuff, right? How you feeling? How's your IV? Blah, blah, blah. Just small shit like that. But he knows who that is. He knows that's the Laurie Strode. He knows that's the woman that babysat him 40 years ago. Her name is on, the piece of paper on his clipboard. She was admitted into the hospital, but she doesn't quite know who he is because it's been a number of years since they've seen each other. They have seen each other since that night in 1978, but he probably went off to college maybe when he was 18 or 19. So it's been a number of years since they've seen each other. And the state that she's in, she's not thinking about him. She's not really, cluing into that, oh my God, Tommy, right? Like she's not cluing into that. She's just so disheveled and tired and exhausted from the shit that just went down at the end of the previous movie. So, after a bit of small talk and medical shit, Tommy Doyle finally says, you don't recognize me, do you? And Laurie, in her own sort of quippy kind of way, because this incarnation of Laurie is very different from the Laurie in 1978, right? I mean, when you look at the Laurie in the 2018 film, she's seen a lot of shit, she's been through a lot of shit, and she no longer gives a shit. She can quip and insult and be sarcastic and make jokes with the best of them, right? She doesn't give a fuck anymore, okay? So she's lying in bed and she, just casually looks over at him and she's like, Did we date? Do I owe you money or something? And you can totally picture, at least I can anyway, Jamie Lee Curtis as that version of Laurie saying something like that. Do you know what I mean? And Tommy's like, no. Although I did have a little bit of a crush on you when I was about 8 or 9. I do have to admit, but no, it's me. It's Tom Doyle. Oh, you probably remember me as Tommy Doyle. And Laurie's there and she's like, Tommy? Little Tommy Doyle? And Tommy's like, yeah, it's me. And you can see Laurie going, oh my God, right? And as she's sort of, taking this all in and having this register, Tommy begins to go off and say, yeah, I went off to college and blah, blah, blah. And, I did, my residency in Chicago and I, worked there for a bit, but I decided to come back to Haddonfield because, I really like the small town and, I grew up here and it's home and there was an opening at the hospital. So you hear him sort of giving some quick exposition and to give some context to maybe sort of what he's been up to the last 40 years. So after all that, Tommy turns to Laurie and says, listen, enough about me. I just want to say that I'm so glad you're okay and I'm really sorry to hear about your house and, blah, blah, blah. And Laurie interrupts him and is like, wait, how did you know about my house? And Tommy's like, oh, well, it's all over the news and the nurses had it on the TV out there and I, caught it and, blah, blah, blah. And Laurie interrupts him again and is like, can I see it on the news? So now she's starting to perk up, right? She's not quite as lethargic as she once before. She perked up a little bit when she realized that, oh my God, this is little Tommy Doyle. How are you? Blah, 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 right? But then this bit of news, the fact that she almost forgot, oh my God, yeah, what are they saying? Like, what is the consensus here? What are they saying? Like, have they found the body? Have they found this? Like, what? Like, she's starting to realize, oh, I want to know this bit of information because that vigilante fight that Laurie had in Halloween 2018 is starting to perk up a little bit again, right? She's because this is personal to her. So Tommy turns on the TV, flips a couple of channels. I have him flip a couple of channels before he gets to the right station because one of my little pet peeves in movies is when, they need to turn on the TV to get some information. And when they turn on the TV, it's on the exact channel at the exact moment they need it to be on and at. Not a big deal, but I'm always like, oh, come on, gee, what a coincidence. I get why they do that. But anyway, just to make things a little more realistic, I'm going to have him turn on the TV, flip a couple of channels, and then he gets to the right channel. And sure enough, there is a reporter on scene with Laurie's house in the background, still in flames, not quite as in flames, not quite as engulfed as it once was. So clearly the firefighters are starting to make some headway but they're still battling it, okay? And the reporter is reporting from the scene. She's talking about how this is Laurie Strode's house. She has not been accounted for, so the authorities are assuming that she got out alive, and they're going to be checking with Haddonfield Memorial, and blah, blah, blah. And that they have found only one body. One body has been found. They believe it to be male, but the identification has not been released yet for obvious reasons, and blah, blah, blah. And at that moment, Laurie is really starting to perk up. She's really laser focused and paying attention because she knows what this means. She knows, as the viewer should know as well, hang on a second here. They should have found two bodies. They should have found two bodies. Ray and Myers, right? That's good that it's male. Well, that's good. But wait a second here. And Laurie knows that as well. And the fact that they've only found one body, you can see the concern come over her face. Now, Tommy doesn't know what's going on yet because the authorities and the media are not letting out that this has to do with Michael Myers. I mean, the public in the town knows something's going on because they can hear the sirens, they can see the police cars going up and down the streets, but most of them are assuming it's just typical Halloween shenanigans, nothing really to worry about, because the authorities don't want to alert the public and cause a panic to make them think that, oh my God, a nightmare is happening again, even though it is, right? Now, you have to keep in mind too, the cops don't want Laurie anywhere near this, okay? They weren't crazy on her getting in on the action in the first movie. I mean, you remember Hawkins, right? Laurie, what are you doing? Why the hell did you do that? You know, and all that. She's like, they know her past with Myers, but it's kind of like, Laurie, let the authorities take care of this. Don't become a vigilante. But for Laurie, it's personal, right? She feels that maybe she is the only one that can truly stop him, because without Loomis, she's probably, you know, the only one that knows him to the degree and in the way that, you know, she does, right? So when she's watching this news report and the authorities are not letting on to what's really going on, she knows at any moment now Haddonfield police are going to come through that door because they're going to want to see if she's okay. They're going to want to interview her and find out some, you know, information. And she knows, listening to that news report, that the chances of that body being Myers are really slim, because she knows that, you know, between Ray and Michael Myers, who's more likely to get up and walk away? Whose MO is there, not there? I mean, Ray was dead when she found him in the closet towards the end of the first movie. She saw him dead, right? Do you remember that scene? Okay, so she knows that if there's a male found, they're not identifying him yet and blah, 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 but there's only been one body found. Oh, shit! Chances are that's probably Ray. Okay, and Myers is long gone. So she starts to go, oh, not actually say that, but you can see it through her body language. You can see it through her facial expressions, right? And she quickly turns to Tommy, grabs him by the lab coat, pulls him into her, and Tommy's like, oh, what the hell's going on here, right? And she's like, Tommy, listen, do you remember that night? Do you remember that night 40 years ago? And he's like, yeah, of course. I mean, there's, you know, some things I don't remember, and, you know, I kind of did. And then she interrupts him again and is like, do you remember what you said to me? Do you remember what you said to me that night standing in the hallway? And then Tommy's like, yeah, I think so. I was good. And then there's a knock at the door, right? And it's one of the nurses, and she opens the door ajar, and she's like, excuse me, doctor, sorry to interrupt, but the police are here to speak with Miss Strode. And Tommy's like, oh yeah, sure, no problem. And the nurse closes the door, but one of the cops puts his hands on the door and kind of keeps it open a bit, right? So he's kind of staring in, but he's far enough away that he wouldn't be able to hear what Laurie and Tommy are saying to one another. And then Laurie spins Tommy back around, and she's like, listen, I need to talk to you. Stall them, okay? It's really important. I need to talk to you. And she looks up to his jacket pocket and sees a pen, and she reaches, takes the pen out, looks to the table beside her bed, and there's a notepad, and she starts to scribble something down, and she's like, stall, tell them anything, tell them you have to change my IV bag, tell them you have to give me a shot, anything, I need to talk to you, it's really important. And at that moment, Karen and Allison come back into the room, and it's at that moment that Laurie tears off the piece of paper, folds it up, puts the pen and the piece of paper back into his jacket pocket, right? And he's like, oh, you know, what is this? Just go, just stall them, please, okay? And he's like, sure, yeah, no, I'll just tell them that I need to talk to you about something, and then you can be all theirs in, like, what, 2 or 3 minutes, whatever? Yeah, sure, yeah. So then Tommy goes to the door, takes the cops back out into the hall. The door shuts. So now Karen, Allison, and Laurie are in Laurie's room, okay? And Tommy and the cops are outside in the hallway. And Tommy's like, hey guys, yeah, sorry, she just needs a moment with her daughter and her granddaughter there, just needs to talk about stuff and things like that. But she seems to be doing okay, and she can be all yours in a couple of minutes. And the cops are like, yeah. Did she say anything tonight at all? Anything about anything that happened? Or and Tommy's like, no. Fire, house burned to the ground, obviously. Crazy Halloween night, right? Am I right? You know, just a little bit, kind of funny moment like that. Not over the top, not too much, not overselling it. Just a nice little kind of slightly humorous moment there, okay? And then Tommy just walks away from the cops and he leaves them standing by the door, and he goes around the desk and he's pouring himself a coffee, and there's a TV on in the corner, and the hospital is you know, it's not as desolate and as ghost town as the 1981 film is. It's not like a hustle and bustle like you would get maybe in a metropolitan hospital, but there's some people around. It's not as dimly lit, right? There's some Halloween decorations there as well, but Tommy is pouring himself a coffee, and you can tell that he's sort of glancing up at the TV and he's glancing over at the cops because he knows that he didn't tell them the truth, and he's kind of there, and then he's kind of like, oh, right, my pocket, like what did she put in there, right? And then at that moment, as he goes to go into his pocket, as he's pouring himself a coffee, a gigantic smash comes from within Laurie's hospital room. Like just all this glass breaking, and the cops are taken back, the nurses are taken back, Tommy is taken back, right? And the cops immediately draw their guns and they go to open the door, but the door is jammed. They can't get in, and they're telling everybody to stay back, and Tommy comes around, you know, the side of the desk, and he's sort of at the back, but he wants to get in there and find out what the fuck has just happened, right? Eventually, the cops open the door, and they realize that it was a chair that was jamming the door handle. As they open the door goes flying, the chair goes flying, and right before them at the other end of the room is a gigantic hole in the window. The window is completely smashed. Now, this is Haddonfield Memorial, okay? This is a small town hospital. This is not a hospital that has 10 stories. So Laurie was admitted into a room on the first floor, okay? Maybe there's one or two levels, maybe there's a basement, I don't know, but it's not like a 10-story building. She was admitted on the first floor, and there's a gigantic hole in the window, and all you see is the darkness out there, and you can begin to see a bit of sheet lightning illuminating the horizon in the distance. And at that moment, when we enter the room and we see this, that's when we begin to hear, for the very first time now, that's when we begin to hear like this classic Carpenter-esque synth bassy piece of music. It's like a note that begins to seep its way finally into the picture. You can hear it. It's giving me goosebumps even talking about it, because it would be like, oh shit, that is like, here it comes. Like that's the kind of music we've been waiting for, right? It's not the full-on Halloween theme. It's not a bunch of notes. It's just this bassy kind of, you know, drone that's beginning to make its way into the picture. And Tommy is standing at the doorway, observing the cops, you know, talking on their radio, saying things like, she's gone, stay back, what the hell is going on? And he's just staring out into the darkness. And he pulls out that note that Laurie had placed in his pocket, and he opens it up and he looks at it, and all it says is, do you remember? Okay, that's what it says. Do you remember? And he looks, you know, like this out into the gaping hole in the window, and he's just staring. He's just staring out as the cops go by him, and he's, you know, kind of being pushed like this, and it's all flooding back to him. Not that he had forgotten about it. I'm not saying he completely forgot about it, but the question that Laurie asked him, do you remember what you said to me standing in the hallway that night? And as he looks at that note and he sees it written, he sees it actually written, do you remember? He looks up at the window, and the wind is blowing in, not a massive wind, but the wind is blowing in because the wind has picked up. Maybe a leaf blows into the room, right? And the blinds are sort of going back and forth, and the cops are trying to figure out what to do. There's a commotion, but Tommy is just completely still, and they're walking past him, and the nurses are walking past him, and he's just completely still, looking out through the darkness. And that music is beginning to build. That Carpenter music is building, and you can hear that it's building to something, right? That synth music is building to something, and then right focused in on Tommy's face, boom, we cut to black, and an epic Halloween theme begins. An epic John Carpenter-esque Halloween theme begins, and we roll the opening credits of what I am calling The Shape. That is what this movie is called. It is called The Shape. And the opening credits roll, and it's like, wow. And it's typical Halloween opening credits where maybe we have a pumpkin in the corner, right? Or maybe it's the Shape's mask, right? Maybe it's the Shape's mask, really dimly lit, kind of hard to see. And the credits, you know, are beginning to come on the screen. And this epic, maybe more epic than you've ever heard before, Halloween theme, synth Halloween theme is just ripping through the credits. And it's like, fuck, shit just got real. But anyway, once the opening credit sequence is done, we cut in to, it's like this fall foliage in the leaves. So we can see these trees swaying back and forth. So the wind has significantly picked up, okay? And definitely there is something on the horizon. It's not just autumn wind. It's not just, you know, fall time. That's part of it, but certainly you get the sense that there is a literal storm on the horizon. And then we see the outside of Haddonfield Memorial Hospital, and we begin to see across this field, kind of next to the hospital, Karen, Allison, and Laurie running across this field. Now, Laurie has a bit of a limp, okay, and her arm is in a sling, and she's bandaged up, okay, but she's kind of hobbling, and you know, and you can hear, "Come on, Mom, come on," you know, you kind of hear it. And then all of a sudden, this truck, sort of in the foreground, kind of peels around this corner, and it's the pickup truck. It's Brackett's fucking truck. It's Brackett's fucking truck, and he peels up and he pulls up right in front of the girls, and the girls are like, what the fuck, right? Because for a second it hasn't hit them that, oh, that's the truck that dropped us off, like, because they're not expecting to see this truck, right? So for a moment they're just like, what the? And then all of a sudden Lee rolls down the window like this, right? That's how we used to roll down our windows, kids, was like this. You don't know how lucky you have it these days. Anyway, so he rolls down his window because it's an older truck, right? And he's like, get in the truck, you know? And then at that moment the girls are like, oh, that guy. And Laurie, who's now much more alert and awake, is like, Lee? You know? And Lee's like, get in the truck, Laurie. So they all pile into the front of the truck, not the back of the truck, which, you know, where they were when they were brought to the hospital. So they're smushed together kind of like this, you know, there's 4 of them there. But they fit. And that's where some exposition happens. Lee peels away, you know, off into the distance to escape the security of the hospital. And they're heading back to Laurie's house, or what's left of Laurie's house, because Laurie has suddenly become obsessed again. But what we don't know, and what we're about to find out, is that Brackett is just as obsessed, if not more so, but at the very least, just as obsessed of taking down Myers as well, because of the death of Annie. So in the front of the truck there, where they all are, that's where some nice juicy exposition happens. We find that information out about Brackett and how he's been obsessed, because him and Laurie are having that conversation because they haven't always agreed on how to take Myers down if and when he were to escape. Over the last 40 years, they've sort of butted heads on that kind of thing. Now, they agree on some things, but they don't agree on other things. So you experience that bickering back and forth. There's a genuine affection there. I don't mean a sexual, you know, affection, obviously, but a genuine affection in the sense that, you know, at one time, Brackett would have looked at Laurie as a daughter, going way back to who knows how long that Annie and Laurie have known each other. Maybe they met when they were 10, right? Maybe they met when they were 9. I don't know. Maybe they met in high school. Who knows? But he's definitely known her a long time. So there's a genuine affection there. But they definitely don't agree. And that disagreement isn't necessarily something major. It could be, you know, just a matter of Laurie wants to take him down and that's it. But Brackett, because he's a former cop, feels like he can still get answers out of him, or wants to, you know, get him into a room and try and torture him, or just fucking, you know, whatever the case is. I'm not saying that is what it is, but there's definitely a bit of disconnect in how they want to handle this whole thing. But both of them, both Brackett and Laurie, Laurie are seen by law enforcement in Haddonfield as sort of loose cannons, like, oh fuck, here they come. You know what I mean? Like, essentially, vigilantes, right? And they're it's like, oh Jesus, like somebody, you know, because they've been around for a long time, they're older, they're snottier, they don't give a fuck about anything anymore. You could totally see Charles Cyphers playing that guy too. So it's that's sort of the relationship that we see there in the truck. And we as viewers are like, oh shit, so Laurie's not the only one that's been waiting. So that's an interesting dynamic to bring into this film. And Brackett is locked and loaded and ready to go because Myers killed his one and only daughter. So he is obsessed with taking Myers down as well. And of course, Laurie introduces who Lee Brackett is and who he is to her, to Karen and Allison officially. And of course, there's, you know, the introductions there and all that kind of stuff. And they talk about Myers, and Laurie's like, I know, you know, he's not there because they didn't find his body. And of course, Brackett already knows this anyway because he's been out and about. You never saw him in the first film, right? In the 2018 film, but he was out and about searching for Myers as well. You only begin to see him now. Okay, so they're on their way over to Laurie's house. Now, when they get to the house is on fire still, but it's pretty much, there's pockets, but a lot of the house has crumbled to the ground, okay? And they're just trying to sort of put out the remaining kind of hot spots and things like that. So they pull up in front of the house, they wheel up onto the property, and the cops are all kind of, you know, looking like this, and what the hell is going on? Sheriff Barker's like, who the hell is that kind of thing, right? But then he goes, because he knows it's fucking Lee Brackett, right? And then both doors on the truck fly open. Karen, Allison, and Laurie get out of, you know, one side, and Brackett's getting out of the other side, and Laurie is just hobbling over to the firemen, and the cops are like, no, whoa, you can't do that. And she's like, did you find it? Did you find it? I mean, she's screaming at the top of her lungs. Barker is like, Laurie, get over here. Laurie, you can't be here, Laurie. You've got to go back to the hospital. So now there's a commotion, okay? Karen begins to lose it when she starts to see a body being transferred into the back of an ambulance in a body bag, because she's starting to realize that, oh my God, that's Ray, okay? And she rushes over and she begins to break down again. And I want that to happen because I want even though I didn't like Ray, I couldn't give a fuck if he lived or not. I'm quite, you know, glad he's dead. I would imagine that the character of Karen is a little upset her husband is gone, right? And Allison is a little upset that her dad is gone. So again, they rush over to try and get close to the body on the stretcher, but the paramedics and the police are like, no, blah, 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 you know, that kind of thing. And Laurie is just looking at Barker and is like, did you find it? You didn't find it, did you? You didn't find it, did you? You know, and Barker's like, Laurie, you've got to go back to the hospital. You're in no shape to be out here like this, or, you know, whatever the case is. And then Brackett walks up into frame and cocks his shotgun, and Barker's like, whoa, Lee, you can't be doing that here, man. This is a crime scene. You know what I mean? And, you know, he's like, you're not sheriff anymore, Lee. And they start to bicker back and forth, right? And Brackett's like, I don't give a shit, man. I want, you know, blah, blah, blah. And I'm Myers this, Myers that. He killed my daughter and all that kind of stuff. So you can definitely tell that there's not only animosity between Laurie and law enforcement, there's animosity and a bit of toxicity between Brackett and law enforcement, you know, so it's just like there's this commotion. So during this commotion, we cut to a POV shot from a distance within the woods, because remember, Laurie's house is in the middle, surrounded by all this, you know, all this woods, right? So we cut to a POV shot from a distance within the woods, and obviously that's the Shape, and the Shape is watching the commotion, right? The Shape is watching Brackett and Laurie and Barker, and you can hear them, you know, and you can see the firefighters, you know, walking back and forth. Maybe you can see Karen and Allison off in the corner. You see the lights flashing from the trucks, right? And all you hear from the Shape is, just that heavy breathing, right? And you begin to hear, you know, the wind pick up in the trees again, and maybe a bit of thunder ever so delicately, you know, starting to roll overhead. So the storm is definitely closer than it was earlier in the film, okay? And then we cut back to the commotion, and while Barker and Brackett are bickering back and forth, Laurie sort of makes her way over to Karen and Allison, because she sees that they're crying, and she's, oh my God, there's Ray. Now you can totally tell that Laurie probably, you know, she probably didn't like Ray too much, okay? I mean, she accepted that that was her son-in-law, and she accepted, you know, that that's the father of her granddaughter, and I don't think she necessarily hated Ray, but she didn't have a relationship with Ray, per se, to the point where his death in that moment would take her away from how obsessed she is with killing the Shape, right? But she recognizes, oh my God, my daughter has just lost her husband, right? So there's a moment where, while the bickering is going on here, she walks over to Karen and Allison and embraces them both, you know, and saying, you know, baby, it's going to be okay, and blah, 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 and that kind of thing. And then Laurie looks over to Brackett, who is walking away from Barker towards her. So she releases herself from the embrace of Karen and Allison, and she walks right up to Brackett and looks at him and says, do you have ammunition? And Brackett just looks right back at Laurie right in the eyes and says, plenty. And it cuts from that moment to Brackett's house. Now, Brackett's house is an old wartime home. It's not a new house that, you know, was built 10 years ago or even 20 years ago in the, you know, in 1999 or, you know, 30 years ago in 1989. I mean, we're talking about a house that is a typical old wartime home that you would see in a small town like Haddonfield. It was probably built in the 30s or 40s. It's like the Myers house. I mean, it doesn't look like the Myers house, but it's that kind of a home, okay? So that's the house that Brackett lives in. So the door swings open, and standing in the doorway are the silhouettes of Laurie and Brackett. Now, Karen and Allison are not there. They've gone with Ray, naturally, right? Because Ray is deceased, and it only makes sense that at that moment, Laurie would say, like, babies, go, you know, it's okay. Mom, are you sure? Yes, please go. You know, I'm going to take care of this. I mean, that's Karen's husband. That's Allison's father. I'm trying to play this as realistically as possible. It's not that we're not going to see Allison and Karen again. We will, but for the time being, it feels like that's what you would do in that kind of a situation. And Laurie, being who she is and how she kind of feels about Ray and where her focus is and her mind is and her, you know, where her obsession is, she's going to go with Brackett. And Brackett doesn't give a fuck about Ray and all that kind of shit because there's no emotional attachment there, you know, at all. So that's who's standing in the doorway, are the silhouettes of Brackett and Laurie. And this is a nice moment for them because, you know, when they walk into the home, you know, you can see some of the old photos on the wall of Annie and her mom and Brackett as well, but the mom has since passed away, and there's some, you know, a photo there of Laurie and Annie when they were kids or in high school and all that kind of shit. Like, that's really cool. That's a nice moment. And then, of course, around that, you see guns and fucking ammo and shit because that's the kind of guy that Brackett is. But this is going to act like some really nice OG, you know, original Halloween character moment, some really nice exposition that the fans are going to eat up. Yes, it's fan service, but it doesn't feel like fan service because this feels like what you would do. We need to see these characters again. We need to see what's happened to these characters in this moment if this is the story I'm telling, right? So, you know, they're there, and maybe there's a police scanner in the corner, and the living room is dimly lit, and Brackett puts on a pot of coffee or something, and they sit down, and Laurie begins to reminisce a bit because Brackett and Laurie, they haven't been in this situation. They've been waiting for this situation. They've been waiting 40 years for this moment, and it's finally arrived, and there's a bit of breathing room here, and they're sort of looking at each other, talking to each other, realizing that at any fucking moment, either of them could be killed like that from the Shape. They know their lives and the lives of the people in the town right now are at stake. The Shape is going to tear shit up in this movie because on some sort of level, he's more fierce. He's more because of what the fuck he just went through. He's like, oh, fuck this shit, right? He's not thinking of this consciously, but I'm just saying, like, that's what's happening here. The town is in grave danger, and Brackett and Laurie begin to reminisce about Annie and you know, looking at the photos and about that night and about maybe even Dr. Loomis as well. And also there's some really nice, you know, exposition and backstory that, you know, and context, you know, when we're sitting there so enthralled with listening to maybe Laurie had a bit of a history with Loomis that we don't know about yet. Maybe Brackett did as well. Maybe Brackett and Loomis became pretty good friends after that, right? Who knows? But it's that moment as they're listening to the police scanner, as they're they're sipping their coffee, there's just a little bit of breathing room there that we as fans can really appreciate, you know, thickening out the bigger picture of what has been going on these last 40 years. And that's exciting to me. So we then cut from Brackett's house back to Laurie's house, which is not there anymore. And the fire is pretty much out now, and you can kind of get the sense that they're starting to wrap some things up, and Sheriff Barker is standing there with his hands on his belt and his cowboy hat on his head, and he's got his back to the woods. Now, where Barker is standing is pretty much at the edge of where Laurie's property meets the woods. So basically right where Laurie's property meets the woods. And the woods is very thick. I mean, you can't even see, like, maybe you can see 10 to 15 feet into the woods, but it's so dense and it's so dark, and it's not like Laurie has any neighbors or there's any street lights or anything like that. So, I mean, it's very dark out there. And Barker is standing there and he looks up to the sky and he sees sheet lightning illuminating the sky, and, you know, he hears a crack of thunder and a gust of wind comes by and nearly knocks over his hat, right? So he puts his hand on his head like this and he takes a couple of steps and he yells out to his men. He's like, you know, we better hurry up, guys. We got a big storm coming in any minute now. And you hear, like, you know, you got it, Sheriff, you know, well, you know, whatever you hear, right? And then Barker hears something in the woods behind him, whether it's a tree branch or maybe it's a movement of some kind or whatever the case is, and he looks around like this. So if you're the woods, the camera, right? He goes like this, you know, and he looks around and the wind is still there, and he puts his hand on his hat like this, and he takes out his big flashlight and he turns it on and he points it into the woods, and maybe that gives him a few extra feet, but you can't really see beyond 15 feet. It's that dense and that dark out there. So Barker thinks it's probably kids, right? So he's like, just let you guys know there's a curfew on. You better get your asses home. And he's looking around, he doesn't see anything, he doesn't hear anything, and all the cops and the firefighters, they're not even paying attention to him. They don't even realize that he's fixated on something in the woods, right? Because they're busy doing their own thing. And he goes like this, he's looking around, he doesn't see anything, and he's about to turn away and he hears something again. Or he thinks he sees something like that, and he's like, hey! You know, and this time he takes a step forward, and now he starts walking in. And there's this great shot, okay? From behind Barker, we see him walk. So if this is Barker, you're the camera, you're the viewer, this is Barker. He starts to walk this way, and as, you know, he continues to walk further and further into the woods, he just disappears. Even his flashlight beam disappears. Now, maybe you can kind of see something in the distance, but it's so thick and so dense that you don't even really see anything, right? So now he's in the woods. Nobody knows where Barker is because you got a cop going, hey, where's Barker? I don't know. He was here a second ago. Go check over there. So that establishes that they don't even know where he is. They didn't even see him go into the woods. And Barker is in the woods, and then, you know, rain begins to fall. Not teeming down, okay? It's not like pouring, but the pitter-patter of rain starts to fall because you can hear it hitting, you know, some of the leaves, some of the leftover leaves that haven't fallen yet. You can hear it hitting things in the woods, logs and foliage and all that kind of jazz. And you can see a bit of the rain falling in Barker's flashlight beam. But it's so dark and so dense that you only see where his flashlight beam is pointed. So it gives you this claustrophobic sort of feel in the woods, okay? Because he can't fucking see anything. He doesn't know what the hell is going on. And you can, and sheet lightning will illuminate the sky every so often, and you see like everything around him, right? That's when you see like vast distances in the woods, is when only the sheet lightning illuminates the sky, because then you can kind of see way over there. So we have some great shots of Barker looking around with sheet lightning illuminating the sky, seeing, you know, from like hundreds of yards behind him, and there's nothing there. And then you know where I'm going with this. Then there's a couple times where sheet lightning illuminates the sky and you see the shape, but he's just there like this, but he disappears within the illumination. Okay, so it's not like you see him in the illumination, it goes dark, and then it flashes again, and then he's gone. No. We go old school, like Laurie looking at Michael Myers within the sheets, right? In Mr. Riddle's backyard. It's like he disappears within the sheets. It's like, what the hell just happened? Michael Myers, the shape, if you will, excuse me, disappears within the illumination of the lightning. So as the lightning is flickering in the sky, we see him standing there, and then as it flickers again, he's gone, and then it goes out. It's like, whoa, what the fuck? Wait a second here. That's we haven't seen that Myers in a while. Like, what the hell is going on here, right? And Barker is looking around like this. You know, he's got his flashlight, he's looking around, and all you hear is the elements, the pitter-patter of the rain, the wind blowing through the foliage, and the trunks maybe swaying back and forth a little bit. You know that cracking sound you kind of hear when there's heavy wind in the woods? You kind of hear that a little bit, right? And there's a flicker of lightning every so often, and maybe in the distance, 40, 50 yards away, you hear, you know, Sheriff, where are you? Hey, Barker. And Barker is fixated like this, you know, he's looking around, he's intense, and then it gets all quiet, and you just hear the rain, and he's like, hey, Sheriff, where are you? And he kind of begins to realize, oh, what the fuck am I doing? It's probably a squirrel, right? You know, so he's like, you know, and you can see the drops of rain falling off his cowboy hat, right? You know, and he's there and he's like this, and then all of a sudden he kind of stops. He's like, as if he senses something. He's like, And then at that moment, there's a quick flicker, a quick flash of sheet lightning. Not a not like that, just like that. Okay, and with it comes a crack of thunder, and right behind Sheriff Barker is the Shape, and we see it just for a brief moment. But I picture it being a shot kind of, you know, from down here, like maybe Barker was looking down at the ground or something, so the camera was kind of low angle, so when the quick flash happens and the crack of thunder, we see the Shape like, you know, right here, but from a lower angle sort of shot in front of Barker, and it's just like, whoa, shit, he's right there. But it's so quick, it's just a millisecond. It's like, oh, fuck. At that moment, the Shape jams a knife right into the back of Barker and lifts him right up into the air. And Barker's flashlight falls by the wayside and rolls over to like a tree trunk or something like that, but it's pitch black. We as a viewer can't see anything. And then all we hear is the rain and Barker going, like this, or whatever the case is, right? And then there's this great low angle shot, maybe it's like a dolly shot, this arcing dolly shot, and we're down low like this, and we see Barker like this, but it's his silhouette, right? Like, it's all silhouetted, it's accented against the illumination of the lightning, right? And the rain is falling down all around them. Even the Shape is silhouetted, and there's Barker like this. He's going like this, and the Shape is just standing there, and the rain is falling down all around him as the Shape stands there. And that's when you hear some sort of Carpenter score begin to play at that moment. And it's like, oh, fuck. Like, just the shot of that could become iconic. One of the most iconic shots of the Shape ever, if it's executed correctly. Barker is there like this in the air. The Shape is like this, you know, with the knife in his back, and it's a low angle shot, kind of from a distance, and you see the you only see that in the illumination of the lightning and the tree trunks all around him, like just fucking, oh fuck. And it's just like the mute, like whatever it is that Carpenter brings into a climactic moment like that, it's like shit. And then Barker just falls to the ground, and the Shape is standing over him, right, with blood on the knife. Do you know what I'm saying? And then it flickers again, and you just see kind of a quick head tilt, and then it cuts from a distance, and you're watching it through the big trunks of the trees, and it flashes again, and you just see Myers standing over the dead body of Sheriff Barker, but only in the illumination of the lightning. Man, I'm telling you, and that would be an iconic shot. So we then cut back to Brackett's house, where Laurie and Brackett are in the living room, still listening to the police scanner, sipping some coffee or tea with their, you know, guns in their hands or whatever the case is. And the storm is in full force now. Like that iconic moment with the Shape behind Barker and the knife in the, you know, in Barker's back, and Barker is lifted into the air like this, and maybe you see some blood coming out of his mouth and the illumination of the lightning. Like that iconic shot and moment is the beginning of when the storm finally arrives and falls upon Haddonfield. Now, it's a regular thunderstorm. I'm not talking about like, you know, hurricane force winds, category 5 here or anything like that. It's just a regular storm, but nonetheless, it's, you know, very moody, very atmospheric. I want to utilize the sounds and the environment of that kind of an autumn sort of storm, right? Because the leaves at that time of year are already on the cusp of falling to the ground, if not have fallen already. So any sort of wind, even if it's not a lot of wind, any sort of wind that a storm would bring would take the remaining leaves off of the trees. So the environment outside, there's a lot of those leaves blowing across the road and, blowing, in front of the frame, in the foreground, in the background, because not only is it autumn, but the storm is now taking the remaining leaves off the trees. So that fall environment is really present at every sort of turn when you're outside, really utilizing that. So anyway, we're at Brackett's house, right? And they're listening to the police scanners, and all of a sudden the power goes out. So, and there's no music. You just hear the wind outside. Maybe some of the branches are hitting Brackett's house because maybe he hasn't done lawn maintenance in a while or something like that. You can hear the rain hitting the roof and hitting the front porch. You can, hear the wind a little bit. And Brackett thinks he sees some movement outside. So he gets up, he goes across his living room, he grabs a he grabs another shotgun because he was sitting there in his chair with a handgun. He grabs a shotgun, cocks his shotgun, and he starts to peer out a window. And Laurie's like, what is it? He's like, I think I saw somebody outside. So Laurie cocks her shotgun, and Laurie and Brackett are peering out windows, trying to get a better view. And then all of a sudden, this movement comes up onto the front porch, and Laurie just thinks, oh fuck, it's him, it's him, it's him, or it's it, right? So she races to the front door, whips open the front door, goes like this with her shotgun, and standing on the front porch it's Tommy Doyle. It's Tommy Doyle. He's standing there and he just looks right into Laurie's eyes and he says, you can't kill the boogeyman. And water is just teeming down his face, and Laurie is standing there like this, and she lowers her shotgun, and she doesn't say anything. He doesn't say anything more because she knows. That is the question she asked him on that piece of paper back in the hospital. He remembered. He remembered that night 40 years ago, and she just grabs him and brings him inside, and they embrace right there in the doorway of Brackett's house, and Laurie just slams the door shut right at the camera, and we cut to black. It's like, whoa. Man, like she remembered, like seeing that moment, seeing not just the character, the characters Laurie Strode and Tommy Doyle embracing, right? We're seeing Jamie Lee Curtis and Brian Andrews embracing each other as the iconic characters Tommy Doyle and Laurie Strode. And that's really cool, right? It's not just about the characters, it's about the original actors playing those characters. So just to see that happen, just, grabs him and embraces him right there in the doorway, and it's like, yes, 40 years in the making. So we then cut back inside Brackett's house, just right inside the doorway there, where Laurie and Tommy are finishing their hug, and Brackett lowers his shotgun and he looks at Tommy and he's like, what are you doing here, right? And Tommy looks to Brackett and is like, well, I thought I saw your truck peeling away from the hospital and blah, 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 blah. I know what you're thinking. You're probably thinking, well, how did Tommy know where Brackett lives? Listen, when you become the kind of old crotchety man that Brackett is, and you've never left Haddonfield, and you become the kind of crotchety old woman that Laurie is, and you've never left Haddonfield, everybody knows where you live. Everybody who's ever been from a small town knows where the crotchety old man that doesn't like you on your lawn lives, right? Everybody knows where the crotchety old woman that has 500 cats lives. So people know. I mean, they just know where they live, right? And because Tommy saw what looked like Brackett's truck taking Allison, Karen, and Laurie away from the hospital, that was his first destination because he wanted to get to Laurie. Not really Brackett. He doesn't care about Brackett, but he wants to get to Laurie because of what Laurie wrote on the piece of paper. So that's why he's there. And as they're having this conversation right inside the doorway, wretched, ear-piercing screams of help come from the police scanner. And I'm talking like they are genuinely frightening. And Brackett and Laurie and Tommy whip their head around, right? And they look at the scanner and they walk into the living room, and all you hear is, officer down, help somebody, somebody help. And you just hear these screams, and then you hear, Laurie's Strode's house, and I said it. And it's like, oh my God, and this bassy Carpenter score, this one note begins to come into the scene, and they're looking at each other like, oh my God, it's okay, this is it, the breathing time is over, fuck, this is it, right? So they start grabbing ammunition off the wall and guns and all that kind of shit. I don't mean like Rambo style, they're not grabbing like bazookas and grenades. I just mean that Sheriff Brackett, being the kind of guy he is, he's heavily armed. He's got a lot of shit in his house, right? And Laurie obviously knows how to use a lot of that shit, but Tommy doesn't. So Brackett turns to Tommy and is like, do you know how to use a gun? And Tommy's like, he's like, well, you're gonna learn tonight, you know, that kind of shit, right? And they start grabbing stuff and they whip open the door because they're gonna head back there. Now the rain now it's not teeming anymore, it's starting to lighten up a bit, so that tells you that the clouds overhead are sort of on their way out. So the heaviest portion of the rain, anyway, is starting to kind of move on its way out. And they get into Brackett's truck, you know, and they turn on the truck and they peel away and the leaves are going by and you see some sheet lightning in the distance, right? Because they're heading back to Laurie's house, or where her house used to be. So Brackett's truck pulls up onto Laurie's property and the ambulance is still there, the fire trucks are still there, the police cars are still there, the caution tape is still up, but Laurie's house is gone. All that's left is just a lot of smoke billowing through the property and some pockets of ash and, a little bit of fire over there, but nobody's around. There's no sign of the firefighters, the paramedics, or the police officers, right? It's very, very eerie and unsettling. So Brackett, Laurie, and Tommy get out of the truck and they cock their shotguns and all that kind of jazz, and they start walking across the property as the smoke is billowing past them. They walk into the smoke and out of the smoke and into the smoke and out of the smoke, right? And they're calling out like, hello, is anybody here? And Brackett walks up to the back of the ambulance and he opens up the ambulance doors, and in the back of the ambulance are two dead paramedics, impaled like right up against the wall, and their necks are broken and blood is coming out. And Ray, who was on the stretcher when we last saw them alive, right? He's there, but he's kind of out of the body bag, sort of leaning over the stretcher like this, right? And he kind of looks like his mouth is broken. It's almost like Myers decided to kill him again, or something, even though he was already dead. It's just awkward looking. It's like, oh my God, like holy shit, right? But there's no sign of Karen and Allison. So it's like, where the fuck did they go? So Laurie, says, I think they must have got away. But where? Are they in the woods? Are they over here? Are they over there? Are they hiding? Like, what the fuck is going on? Are they injured? Are they hurt, right? And then Tommy opens up one of the fire trucks and the firemen sort of fall out like this and they're dead as well. And then Laurie starts to look around with a flashlight, and there's like 3 or 4 police officers impaled against several trees, like 6 feet off the ground into trees like this, and their necks are broken and blood is coming out like this. And it's like, it looks like really awkward and unsettling. That's one of the things that I did like about the 2018 film, is that when a lot of the kills happened off screen, when we saw the result of those kills, I liked that they were very awkward and in weird positions, and it made me feel like, oh my God, how bad was whatever happened here? Because that is the end result. Like, what are we dealing with here? What kind of force, what kind of power are we dealing with here that is the end result of the murder? I mean, it's horrific. It's very, like, the uncanny valley is really prominent, when you start to see human beings dead in awkward positions that they just shouldn't be in. And so I definitely want to utilize that again with these deaths in this movie. So they start looking around and everybody's dead. Everybody's dead, and they start, looking over at the woods, and there's like a trail of bodies leading into the woods, because at one time there was probably like 20, 25 people there. You had your paramedics, you had your crime scene investigators, you had your police officers, your firemen, right? There was a lot of people there. And of course the news was there as well, right? And it's like, what the fuck is going on? And then in the woods, they see like a little bit of a light going like some kind of light, right? And they start to walk into the woods. Tommy, Laurie, and Brackett, they're walking into the woods, very cautious. There's that drony Carpenter music. It is a fucking eerie ass scene, right? A lot of low-key lighting and light and shadow, because I want to utilize that, the flashlights and only seeing where your flashlight is pointed and all that kind of shit. And they're walking into the woods, and then all of a sudden they see that, oh my God, it's the news reporter. The news reporter is dead, and so is her cameraman. He's dead, but the camera is still on. The camera, there's a live feed that's still going. okay? And it's like, holy shit, and Brackett takes the camera and he looks at it and he says, is this on? Is this on? And he's looking at it. And everybody now in the town of Haddonfield is watching former Sheriff Brackett talking to the town of Haddonfield. And he says, I want you to listen to me. This is Brackett. This is Lee Brackett. I want you to listen to me. Michael Myers is here. He is here. I want you to bolt your windows. I want you to lock your doors. I want you to get in your basements and I want you to stay there. If you can hear me, do it and do it now. Michael Myers is here. Please, you need to do this. This is very important. And he starts going off like that, right? Because the camera was still on, but everybody else is dead. It's like, holy fuck. And we start to see families in different houses watching Brackett on the TV. And it's that connection again. It's that connection to the OG, right? There's Brackett, former Sheriff of Haddonfield, doing what he's got to fucking do because he's been there. He knows what it's like. And he's talking, to the camera. Now, he doesn't know if it's on or not. He doesn't know if the live feed is still on, if it's been cut, or what the fuck is going on. But then we show a shot of the news station and everybody's dead. And it's like, oh my God, what the fuck is going on? That's why the live feed is still going, because everybody at the news station, this little small town, remember, this isn't a big city where there's like hundreds of people working there. It's a small, local, very small sort of community network, right? That's what this feed is from. That doesn't mean that maybe the larger, more, bigger regions and networks won't now get involved, but that little reporter was just doing a community thing, right? It was Halloween night and that's what she was doing. That live feed is still going. He doesn't know it, but it is. It's like, fuck, now everybody, we see people in the town getting their kids in, come on in. We see people locking their doors, bolting their windows, all that shit, because it's like, oh my God, it's ramping up. So then Tommy, Laurie, and Brackett continue to sort of walk through, the woods there, and the smoke is kind of still billowing into the woods, right? And Tommy stumbles upon Sheriff Barker impaled in a tree, and his neck's kind of like this, and blood is coming from his nose and his mouth, and there's this big branch right through the middle of his chest, and Brackett sort of, nudges Tommy aside and walks over to Sheriff Barker, and there's almost a moment there. He doesn't say anything, but there's almost, a sign of respect, a sign of mutual respect, because they haven't gotten along. I mean, Brackett doesn't he can't stand Barker, and Barker doesn't like Brackett. But because, he's the sheriff of Haddonfield and Brackett is the former sheriff, there's almost like just a moment of mutual respect because Barker died in the line of duty. So you kind of see that moment, but then Brackett turns around to face Laurie and Tommy and is like, we're alone out here. Right? Because there's that realization that, holy shit, there were wretched, ear-piercing screams for help on that scanner. Officer down, we need help, blah, blah, blah. Here's where we are, and there's nobody here. There's no cops coming. There's no sirens in the distance. It's like, holy shit, I think we're alone out here. And Laurie, continues to yell out like, Karen, Allison, it's me, answer me. And there's no answer. And there's a reason why, okay, which I'll get to very soon. But anyway, so Laurie, Tommy, and Brackett pile into Brackett's truck because they're going to head over to the police station because they got to find out why help never came. I mean, these cops were screaming, officer down, help us, and nobody came. So they race over to the Haddonfield police station. And remember, this is not a gigantic metropolitan police station. I mean, this is a small town police station, right? So it's not like they have like hundreds and hundreds of cops. So anyway, they get to the police station, they go inside, and it's very apparent that something is wrong. There's dead cops all over the place, all right? And it's like, holy fucking shit. Laurie and Tommy and Brackett are walking through this dimly lit, sort of like this, it looks almost apocalyptic, like just this dimly lit, horrific crime scene, and the cops are like slumped over their desks, and they're pinned to walls. It's like, holy shit, how did he do this? Like, what the fuck are we dealing with here? And you're seeing all this, and it's horrific to look at. And it's like, Jesus. Now remember, I'm trying to find that balance, right? I wouldn't ordinarily maybe show so much, but I'm trying to sort of, honor what came before and find that nice balance between what I show, how I show it, and how much of what I show. So I'm trying to show this, but within the blanket of this really moody atmosphere atmospheric sort of, scene, right? Because remember, it's still fall outside as they're racing down, the streets and back and forth. The leaves are blowing across. The rain has begun to subside, so it's not really raining anymore. The roads are beginning to sort of dry up a bit, right? But the wind is still there, and you can kind of see some lightning off in the distance still. There's a bit of thunder there. So it's really atmospheric. They're walking through the police station. There's nobody there. And she's like, I gotta find them. I gotta find them. And you can start to see Laurie now struggle with two things. Like she desperately wants all her focus on Michael Myers because she's waited 40 years for this moment, but she's missing her babies. She's missing her daughter and her granddaughter. So you can see that pull. It's kind of like, oh, fuck, like, what are we gonna do? And Tommy, you can see him beginning to sort of realize that I gotta, like, I don't have time to be a wimp here. I don't have time to not know how to handle a gun or not know shit. So you can see him gaining a bit of strength within his character, and Brackett is just Brackett. He's calm, cool, collected, and like, fuck off, let's go. He's kind of that guy. He's already there because he doesn't have kids that he's looking for. He's not a wimp. He doesn't, there's no learning curve for him to know how to use a gun. He is fully one focus, completely tunnel vision to kill fucking Michael Myers. So you can see those things within their characters and how they play out against each other as well, which is really cool. But that police station is just fucking like, oh my God. So Tommy is trying to jump on his smartphone, right? Because he wants to contact or see if he can contact, maybe via their Facebook page or their, Twitter account, one of the local police stations in the next town or the next county, because he needs to let them know. He needs to let the authorities know outside of Haddonfield what's going on inside Haddonfield. And they can't do that via any of the computers at the police station because the power is out. So the internet is out, and obviously Brackett and Laurie don't have, smartphones, but Tommy does because he's a doctor. So that's what he's trying to do. He's having some trouble doing it because for some reason he's having some trouble, connecting, just to add some suspense in there. But the stakes are so high. This movie is like the battle for Haddonfield, right? Because what's happening now is, the rest of the movie becomes this cat and mouse game between Laurie, Brackett, and Tommy, hot on the heels of the Shape, because the Shape is beginning to insidiously move through the town of Haddonfield like a virus. And it's like, what the hell is going on? Because if that's what he can do at the news station, and this is what he can do at the police station, right? It's like, what the fuck are we in for? And that's what he did back at Laurie's place. It's like, oh my God, like, what are we dealing with here, right? I want to utilize those three locations and those three horrific scenes as, foreshadowing to what is potentially going to happen to the town of Haddonfield if somebody doesn't stop it. Do you know what I'm saying? And they know that. And, there's this sense that it's like, at least for the time being, it's up to the originals. It's up to Laurie Strode. It's up to Lee Brackett. It's up to Tommy Doyle to potentially take down the Shape. It's like, is this even possible? So now we start to see the residents of Haddonfield, battening down the hatches, locking the doors, bolting the windows, couples and families getting their flashlights together and their guns, if some of them have guns, right? Hiding in basements. We see some nice exposition between families because nobody knows where Michael Myers is. They've just been told by former Sheriff Brackett of Haddonfield that the Shape is back. And because a lot of these residents saw something happen live on camera, they're starting to buy into it. Like, holy shit, that crazy old man he might not be crazy here. Like, shit is going down. The power is out. Nobody is out on the streets. And this is where I'm going to utilize the Shape in its pure OG form, right? The there, not there. Think you see him, then he's gone. Suddenly pops up. Oh my God, what the fuck is going on? The whole look, the visual aesthetic at night, right from the beginning of this film, has been all about the whitish, bluish moonlight, right? The cool, crisp sense. And let's not forget, the wind is still blowing. The leaves are blowing across the streets, right? The trees are swaying back and forth. So that typical Dave McRae mood and atmosphere is firing on all cylinders. So much so that when you're watching the movie, you almost, you can taste it. You You can smell that cool, crisp campfire sort of smell that's naturally in the air that you sometimes get in October, you know, and you can kind of smell that. You can literally sort of feel that as you're watching this, right? So, you know, like maybe there's a scene, oh my God, like the shape is just moving through and Laurie and Tommy and Brackett are trying to keep up with him, right? Like maybe there's a scene where one of the residents of Haddonfield goes into the kitchen to get some batteries for her flashlight, and she's there in the kitchen and she has her back to her kitchen window, and the lightning sort of, you know, flickers outside for a moment and we don't see anything, and all of a sudden it flickers again and there is the shape. There's James Jude Courtney standing right there, right at the glass. It's like, whoa, holy shit. And he smashes the glass and his hands come through the glass, grabs the woman and pulls her through the window, and it's like, oh my God, and she's struggling and her feet are like this at the camera. It's like, what the fuck is going on? And you see him pulling her out like this, and he's got his knife and he goes like this, and then boom, it just flashes, you know, black or whatever the fuck it is. Like, oh my God, like he could be anywhere at any given moment. I also want to utilize the tracking shot, but reverse it. Okay, in Halloween 2018, there was that nice long tracking shot, you know, with Michael going to the back of the house, grabbing the hammer, going inside, killing the lady in the kitchen, going outside, going into the, you know, neighbor's house, killing Marion Singh. Marion, if you're watching, how you doing, right? It was a great shot, but I didn't like the fact that we could see the shape so clearly. I just didn't like that at all. Love the idea of the shot, didn't like the fact that we could see him so clearly. So although I would love to utilize that same shot in this sequel concept, I'm not so sure if actually following the shape for so long is the correct thing to do, because it might be a little too sort of like we're seeing his process, and I don't know if we should necessarily see his process. But what I think would be cool is if we reverse it and we follow a long tracking shot with Laurie, Tommy, and Brackett, and we're following them from yard to yard and house to house. It's like a 3 or 4 minute shot. It doesn't cut. We see them, you know, we see them going inside different houses, finding dead bodies, talking to people who maybe are barely alive and surviving. You keep going over there, go, and the camera suddenly follows, you know, Laurie out of the house as she's running across the street, and we're behind her, and she goes into, like, you know, a neighbor's house. All the while, you know, the remaining lightning is flashing above her and the wind is blowing. Every time she goes outside, we hear the wind, we see the leaves, and then she goes inside the house, right? And the wind and the leaves just quiet down a little bit, and then she goes outside the house and the wind and leaves pick up again. Just those sound cues, those audio cues of the sound effects and the environment, the nice contrast there really sort of grounds it in reality and makes it feel very realistic, almost very much like some of the video games, the open world video games that you play. So I think that would be a nice flip to actually see it from the human perspective, because they are humans, in this race against time to find the shape, and then they hear screams over here and they're like, what the fuck is going on? Now, again, I don't mean a long scene, okay, but maybe a scene that's, I don't know, 2.5, 3 minutes long, and that's long. It doesn't sound long, but that's long. And I understand that the logistics of pulling off a shot like this is not easy. It's one of the reasons why they don't do it very often, but it is achievable. It might take one night or evening of rehearsals, but it is definitely achievable. And if we could pull it off, if it is something that is achieved, it would add a whole different layer and feeling to this picture, and urgency to the stakes that are happening here in Haddonfield, and a perspective we have not seen before in a Halloween movie. We are following Laurie Strode, Brackett, and Tommy, out of the house over here, in there, and then maybe we follow them for a few seconds individually into a room or up there, or up the stairs down here. It would just be awesome to see. Now, the vast majority of the kills in this movie are going to be off screen, but that doesn't mean we're not going to see some classic, awesome Michael Myers kills on screen, with some new classic kills as well on screen, like the lady being pulled through the window, right? We're going to see all of that juicy stuff, but remember, this is pretty much a rampage through the town of Haddonfield. So there's only so many times you can show a kill on screen and so many ways you can kill somebody before it becomes really redundant and repetitive. So we don't want things to feel exhausted and tiring. So we want to leave a lot to our imagination, capitalizing on the creative choice that David Gordon Green and company did in the 2018 film by seeing the end result of things where it was like, oh my God, this is so fucking eerie, right? And imagine like that tracking shot, you know, following Laurie and Brackett and Tommy, you know, going through houses, seeing bodies and shit. It's like, what the fuck are we dealing with here? We have never seen this before. And it's done really eerie and creepy. It's like, what the fuck are we dealing with here, right? And there's even this great scene with Lonnie Alam and his son Cameron. Yes, that's right. I haven't forgotten about those guys. So the scene takes place at the Alam residence, right? Where, you know, Mrs. Alam is essentially battening down the hatches, right? Cameron's mom, and she's taking, you know, the warning quite seriously. And Cameron is very worried about Allison because he can't call her because he threw her fucking phone in the punch or whatever the hell that was hours earlier at the Halloween dance. So he wants to go over there, but he doesn't want to go outside because of the warning by this former sheriff of Haddonfield, Sheriff Brackett. Like, he doesn't know who this is, right? But his dad does, Lonnie does, but he's not really taking this seriously at all. I mean, he turns to Cameron and he's like, listen, do you want to go over to your girlfriend's place? I'll drive you over there right now. You know, and Cameron's like, yeah, but Dad, it shouldn't, I mean, this guy on the TV, it's just Lee. Listen, Lee is crazy. He's insane. Okay, he's been crazy Michael Myers shit for years. Nothing's gonna, look, I'll drive you over there right now and you'll see. Nothing's gonna happen. I'll drive you over there. And it's kind of like, okay, well, we kind of know where this is going, right? And Cameron, because he cares about Allison, wants to go over. But the mom was like, what are you guys doing? You gotta go see this. Like, that kind of shit is going on in this scene. But sure enough, Cameron and Lonnie, he's a bit of a dick dad, but not like Rob Zombie Halloween dick dad. Okay, he's just that guy. He's never left Haddonfield. He was born and raised there. He still lives there, right? He probably married. The mom was probably a local gal as well. So they leave the house. They get into Lonnie's pickup truck. For some reason, everybody drives a pickup truck, but it's a much newer pickup truck as opposed to Brackett's older one. But anyway, so they get into the truck, they peel out, they drive off. Remember, there's no power in the town, so the roads are just illuminated by the moonlight, and you can see some leaves blowing across in the wind, and inside the truck, Lonnie is talking about the boogeyman and how there's no such thing, and how about, 40 years ago there was this guy named Michael Myers, a couple of murders, but at the end of the day he was caught. And listen, you have nothing to worry about. Brackett's this crazy old man that nobody fucking takes seriously anyway. He's cried wolf I don't know how many friggin' times, and there's probably a bit of truth to what Lonnie is saying, right? So that's the kind of conversation that's happening in the car. So it's really cool to see Lonnie as an adult now. And there's even some fog on the road now, right? Because it just rained, and because of the atmosphere and the temperature and that kind of shit. So there's, bits of fog. They're driving through bits of fog, right? And all of a sudden, Cameron sees Michael Myers standing just in the distance, right, within the fog. And Lonnie's like, who the fuck is that? And he doesn't brake. He doesn't speed up. He's just like, well, they're gonna get out of the fucking way, okay? Just to get out of the fucking way. And they keep driving, and all of a sudden, the fog kind of gets thick, and Michael's gone. And it freaks Lonnie out. It freaks Cameron out, but it freaks Lonnie out because deep down inside, Lonnie really does believe, but he's been suppressing it. It's not cool, right? He's one of those guys that just hasn't grown the fuck up. Deep down inside, on some sort of subconscious level, he knows there's truth to this, and that moment freaks him the fuck out, and he puts the brakes, like he just steps on the brakes, right? And the truck just stops, and it's quiet, and he's like, where the fuck did he go? And Cameron is freaking the fuck out right now, right? So Lonnie says, stay here. He gets out of the truck. He opens the door. He gets out of the truck. He walks around like this. He's standing there on a dimly lit moonlight, road with a bit of fog. And he's looking around, and he walks away, from the truck. And he's like, hey, stop fucking around out here. And he doesn't see anything, right? He's like, the fuck? And he just takes a moment, and he walks back to the truck, and he goes to get in the truck, and he closes the door, and he looks over at his son, and Cameron is dead. Cameron is dead. His throat is slit, and he's leaning against the fucking passenger side window. And it's like, whoa, shit. shit, I did not see that coming. Cameron is fucking dead. And then all of a sudden, the Shape's fist comes right through the back of the pickup truck, not the side, not Halloween 4-esque, but the back comes right through and grabs Lonnie and just takes his neck and snaps it like this. And it's like, oh shit. And then Lonnie falls forward, right onto the horn, but bounces off the horn and kind of keels over to the side of the wheel. So it's just kind of like, like this. And it's quiet. And it's just the shot of the truck amongst this fog. And that was it. The demise of Lonnie Elam and his son Cameron. I mean, everybody in the town is fair game. I mean, this is that slaughterhouse that Brackett talked about in the original Halloween coming true. Do you remember when he said that? This quote right here. More fancy talk. Doctor, do you know what Haddonfield is? Families, children, all lined up in rows up and down these streets. You're telling me they're lined up for a slaughterhouse. And what does Loomis say? They could be. Well, this is that slaughterhouse. I mean, he's going in and out insidiously, right? And then we start to see Karen and Allison pop up over some bushes, right? So they're alive. They're still alive, and they got some dirt on them and maybe some, bruises and shit like that from clearly a couple hours before as well. I mean, remember, this is all one night, and you can really see the relationship, the bonding between mother and daughter. I mean, obviously in a situation like that, you kind of have to bond and work together or you're anyway, right? But you can really see that dynamic building there. And there's not only have they just come from Laurie's place, right? Running through the streets, trying to dodge the Shape, not knowing where he is. And we see, we might even see a bit of that play out. They're searching for Laurie because they went over to Brackett's house and she wasn't there. So they're like, where's Grandma? Where's Mom? I mean, they don't even know if Grandma, Mom, Laurie is alive. And Laurie, Grandma, Mom, doesn't even know if they're alive. So they're trying to find them, right? And they think they can hear her like off in the distance, but they're not sure. But they're like sitting ducks out there. They're fish out of water trying to find Laurie, but still trying to, get away from the Shape. But that's what's happening here. And Brackett knows that he's got to put a stop to this. And the only way is to take down the Shape, right? But we see wonderful moments, like great epic kills with Michael Myers and wonderful classic Shape moments during this rampage. It's very intense. Like there's some pockets of breathing room, absolutely. It's not just like the next 30 minutes is there's some pockets of breathing room, but not very long. Not very long. I mean, this is full on the battle for Haddonfield, and it's classic Myers all the way through. And then there's a moment when Tommy and Laurie and Brackett are out on the street, their guns cocked, and maybe they've just come over a fence or something like that because they're trying to find the Shape, and this police car pulls up right beside them, and they think it's a remaining cop. Oh my God, a police car, yes, but it's actually Karen and Allison. It's Karen and Allison. The cop that was in the car was dead, and they stole the car, and they're like, Mom, and they get out, and Grandma, and they all hug, and there's this nice little sort of moment and reunion because they've been driving around trying to find them, right? Because they went to Brackett's house, they weren't there, so like, oh my God, where are they? So they've been sort of like, the Brackett and Laurie and Tommy have been hot on the heels of the Shape, and Karen and Allison have been hot on the heels of Brackett, Laurie, and Tommy. It's like this holy fucking thing, like, my God, right? So they hug there, they pop open the trunk of the police car, and there's more ammunition there. There's a couple of shotguns that Allison and Karen take as well, right? So now you have the 5 of them that are hunting down the Shape, but the Shape is so elusive, and he's moving in and around, like, it's just like, it's like, we've never seen the Shape like this, but this is what we've been waiting for to see from the Shape. I mean, the body count in this movie could rival anything in Friday the 13th, 100%. But the gratuitous violence is not there. So we're not seeing like blood spurting everywhere, anything like that. We're not seeing that. It's classy. It's classy, but it's intense, and it's mixed in with seeing the classic Michael that we know. So again, it's that balance. Does it take a lot of work? 100%. Absolutely it does. But it can be achieved. It can be achieved when you have the vision and you know the right balance and what, to do and how the shape should be utilized against the backdrop of something more modern. So that's what happens there. So the suspense I want to create, for the rest of this movie is done by raising the stakes to levels we haven't seen in a Halloween film. So, obviously, this video is already over an hour and a half long. So there's a lot of details and a lot of scenes that would still need to be, fleshed out and connected and really cool shit like that. Maybe you guys can comment below and let me know some of your ideas to connect with my ideas. But the climactic moment of this movie starts to happen when Laurie and Karen and Allison and Tommy and Brackett find themselves in a home. They come upon a murder scene, and it's of a family. And the parents are dead, the teenage son is dead, the dog is dead. But then all of a sudden, they start to hear some whimpering and some crying coming from a closet. And it's of a female. And Laurie rushes over there, and she opens the closet door, and kneeling at the bottom of the closet is this young teenage girl about 16, 17 years old. And Laurie kneels down beside her and shines her flashlight on her. And she's got blood on her, and she's shivering and scared. And there is an unbelievable resemblance to Judith Myers. And Laurie is looking at her, and she's saying, it's okay, I'm here, I'm not gonna let anything happen to you, it's okay. And the girl, falls into Laurie's arms, and Laurie embraces her, while Brackett and Tommy and Karen and Allison sort of look on, right? They're watching this moment, and this girl is saying, please don't let him get me. Please don't let him get me. Please don't let him get me. Say, I'm not going to let anything happen to you. It's okay. I'm not going to let anything happen to you. You're safe now. Laurie is saying all the right things. And as the young girl continues to nestle into Laurie's arms and cry, the look on Laurie's face says it all. She's come to a realization. She's beginning to realize that this moment was meant to be. That this girl doesn't look just like the sister of Michael Myers for nothing. This girl did not survive when the shape entered the house for no reason. This is an opportunity to lure Michael Myers back to where it all began, in one final attempt to bring peace to the town of Haddonfield. Laurie gets the girl to her feet, and she holds on to her, and she says, I want you to listen to me. I need your help, okay? I'm not gonna let anything happen to you, but I need you to be strong for me. I know you're scared, I know you're frightened, and I know you don't know what to do, but I'm not gonna let anything happen to you. I need you to trust me, okay? Will you trust me? Can you trust me, please? I need you to be with me right now. And the young girl is just shaking her head. Yes, okay, yes, okay. I need you to do something for me, and I promise you, I'm not gonna let anything happen to you, okay? I promise, but I need you to be brave for me right now. I need you to be brave, okay? Okay, I promise, okay. And then we cut to black, and all is quiet. We then start to hear a bit of wind. We then cut in, and we're looking at the front of the house that we were just inside of. The front door slowly opens. The young teenage girl exits. She's looking nervous, scared, but strong. She walks slowly down the steps and starts walking towards the road. Wind blows her hair softly as leaves blow by her gently. She makes her way to the center of the road and stands there amongst the fog, with the moonlight beaming down upon her. We then cut inside the house, where Brackett, Laurie, Karen, and Allison and Tommy are watching from the windows. Brackett turns to Laurie and says, "Are you sure this is gonna work?" And Laurie responds, "I hope. She's strong. I know she can do this. She taps on the glass to get the girl's attention. The girl looks over at her, and then back to the center of the road. Laurie says to herself, "Come on, baby, come on, I know you can do this. Be brave, be brave." Brackett turns to Laurie and says, "See, I told you she wasn't going to do it." "She will, she can, she can. She knows we're watching, she knows nothing's going to happen to her." And at that moment, the young girl lets out, "Michael!" And Laurie and Karen and Allison and Tommy and Brackett are all like this, right? Actually, Brackett is standing in the front door. I mean, the door is still open. He's standing there cocked and ready to go. He's not like, he might be 35, 40 feet away from this girl. Not that far away. And he's not going to let anything happen to her, right? He is just waiting for Myers to show up because he has... it's personal for him, right? He's just waiting, and he's not going to let this, young teenage girl out of his sight because even though it looks like Judith Myers, it's like his Annie almost in some respects, right? And although this girl is out there alone, whatever Laurie said to her off camera has convinced her to go out there and do this. They're using her as bait. Okay, this girl looks like Judith Myers. Why did she survive? Did Michael sacrifice her for some strange reason? He didn't sacrifice his own sister, who was the real Judith Myers back in 1963, or did this girl just happen to, survive and hide, and Michael just didn't find her, right? We don't know. The young girl doesn't know. Laurie doesn't even know. All she knows is that this girl looks like Judith Myers, and it's not, there's a high probability that she would know that because she's lived in the town for 40 years. She's probably studied everything about the Shape and Michael Myers and, Judith and the history and all that kind of stuff because she's been waiting 40 years for this moment. So when she sees this young girl who has an uncanny resemblance to Judith, there's a little bit of selfishness in Laurie as well, right? I mean, it's probably not the smartest fucking thing to put that girl out there in harm's way, but Laurie is obsessed. So although the girl might not be in grave danger because everybody is cocked and ready to go and it's only going to be a matter of seconds before they can fire on the Shape, there's some selfishness there as well. And she's using this young girl who's very naive because she looks like Judith, right? So the girl continues to stand there looking over at Brackett and Laurie and, kind of as if to say, like, do you want me to say it again? Or, what do you want me to do? I mean, she's nervous, she's scared, but she's doing this because she believes in the authority figures that are there. Brackett, identified himself as the former sheriff of the town and all that kind of jazz. So, she feels somewhat safe. And, but the fog is starting to get thicker, and Brackett is starting to not lose her completely, obviously. It's not like there's a fog machine out there, like that, but he's starting to lose any real clarity. And of course, he's 80 years old, so his eyesight is not the best, and he yells out to Laurie, "Laurie, we gotta bring her in. I'm starting to lose her in the fog," right? And Laurie is there, and she's like, "We need more time, Lee. We need more time. Just give it more time. Just give it more time," right? And Lee's like, "Fuck this. Honey, come here. It's okay. You did good," right? And he starts walking towards her, and she kind of goes, "Oh, okay," and she starts walking towards Brackett, and then all of a sudden, the fog kind of clears behind this Judith lookalike, and there is the Shape standing right there. And Brackett's like, "Jesus Christ, come here, baby, come here!" And she screams at the top of her lungs and runs right for Brackett, past Brackett, into the arms of Laurie in the doorway. And Brackett holds up his shotgun, like that, and says, "I've been waiting 40 fucking years for this. This is for my Annie!" And he just unloads on the Shape, and the Shape just takes it here and here and here like this, and he falls sort of into the fog and disappears. But you can hear him hit the road, right? Now, again, the fog is not ridiculously thick where you can't see anything, but it's thick enough where it makes it difficult to see. So you can see that he hits the road, but you can't quite see where he is, right? And Brackett, you know, walks up, and Laurie is holding the girl in her arms. It's okay, baby. Like, you know, you did good. You did good. Like, Jesus Christ, you selfish, you know, like, what are you doing having her out there, right? But this is how strong that driving force is for Brackett and for Laurie to take down the shape, that they're willing to put this teenage girl who happens to look like Judith, okay, but in harm's way, even though she wasn't completely in harm's way, right? And Brackett starts to slowly walk towards the shape, right? And all you see are his legs, okay, because the fog is kind of covering up, you know, covering him up here. So you do see his legs, and the fog gets thick, and then it dissipates a bit, and then it gets thick again, and then it dissipates a bit. And remember, all of this is illuminated by moonlight, and the leaves are still going by, and the wind is still blowing and picking up a little bit and then getting softer, right? Don't ever forget that. That is what this atmosphere is like. And Brackett is walking, you know, slowly up to the shape, and he's putting more shells, you know, into his shotgun, and he's like, you know, son of a bitch, you know, whatever he's saying, right? And he's walking up, and he puts one leg on side of Myers and the other leg on the other side of Myers, and he's there, and he's standing over the shape. Now, you can see his legs, but you can't really see his torso or his mask or his head, because the fog is, you know, not like thick. You can kind of see it a little bit, but it's thick enough where the fog is more prominent, okay? And he's there, and he puts his gun right into the barrel, like the barrel of the gun goes right into the fog and sort of, you know, disappears a bit, and he's just like, fucking son of a... And he's about to shoot again when Myers' hand grabs the end of the shotgun, and his mask comes out of the fog like that, and it's like, whoa, holy shit, and a knife goes right into the chest of Brackett. It's like, oh shit, no way, fuck, no. I mean, you could see it coming, but it's like, oh man, and Brackett's just like, like this, and Laurie's in the doorway with, you know, the Judith look-alike, and, you know, is like, no, Lee, no, and she takes out her gun, and she just starts firing, like, it's like, what the fuck are you doing? You know, you might hit Lee as well, right? But the bullets are hitting the shape, you know, in the shoulder as he's sitting there on the ground, and just takes the knife out, and Brackett just falls to the ground. And it's like, oh, fuck, and Laurie's like, come on, Karen, babies, come on, get into the car, because there's the police car that's right there as well, right? You know, the one that they came up in. So, Laurie's like, come on, I need you to trust me, baby, I need you to trust. She's constantly saying that to this girl, like, she's so selfish. I mean, really, at the end of the day, she is the only one that can do this. She is the only one that, if anybody can take down the shape, and, you know, Dr. Loomis isn't alive anymore, it's Laurie Strode. Absolutely 100%, right? So, you know, she's telling them to all get in the car. Tommy, come on, you know, get in the car. And the shape is over here, or whatever, or the cop car is over there. Whatever it is, there's a bit of distance between the cop car and where Brackett and Myers is, right? And she's like, get in the car, and she spins the Judith look-alike around. You know, she spins her around, and she's like, come on, this is what you want, and the girl's like, what the fuck are you doing? Come on, Michael, come on. And Michael just stands up like this, you know, in the fog and the moonlight, and she puts the girl into the passenger seat, okay, of the cop car, and she gets in the cop car, right? And she turns to the girl, and she's like, I need you to still trust me. I'm not gonna let anything happen to you, okay, babies? All right, everybody? You know, and she starts the car, and she backs up, and she spins the car around so the passenger side window is facing Michael, and there's the Judith girl right in the passenger side window, you know, looking like this, and Laurie rolls down the window and screams across, come get her, Michael, like this, and the girl's like, what the fuck is going on, right? And but Laurie knows what she's doing. Now, everybody else in the car, like Tommy kind of suspects, he thinks he knows what's going to happen, right? Karen and Allison are fucking like, what the fuck is Grandma and Mom doing? But at the same time, they're so caught up in the adrenaline that they're just going with it. And it's almost the same thing with this young girl. She's just kind of like this, and she sees the shape just stand up into the fog and the moonlight, you know, falling down upon him, and he starts to walk towards the car, and the car just peels out and starts heading down the street, and the shape is hot on its heels, and all of a sudden you hear this thundering John Carpenter Halloween score. Run, dun, 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 It's like, oh my God, like what's going to happen? Because in some ways, even though it's not Judith Myers, because there's such an uncanny resemblance, in some weird symbolic way, it's like the shape is stalking Laurie and Judith. It's like, oh my God, it's eerie and weird, and I get goosebumps even when I think about it. And the car just peels around the corner and starts heading down this neighborhood street. And at the end of the street, through the windshield as the car is going like this, you can see the Myers house. Now, I know what you're thinking. Yeah, but Dave, in the original Halloween, there was no street across the street from the Myers house. It was just a sidewalk with houses. I know that. But hey, it's been 40 years. Who's to say that there hasn't been some construction across the street and they made this street and built all around it? Who the hell knows, right? Plus, it's great cinematic shit. So the car is zooming down the street, heading towards the Myers house, and Laurie's in the car saying, babies, I just want you, okay? I need you to trust me, okay? I just want to go. And everyone's like, what the fuck is going to happen here, okay? When I tell you to get out of the car, I want you to get out of the car. You trust, you get out of the car. Mom, what are you going to do? Just trust me, you get out of the car. And it's like, holy fuck, what is going to happen? And she's getting closer and closer to the Myers house, right? Which is still abandoned, by the way. Nobody lives in the house. It's been abandoned for years, probably since, I don't know, 65, or who knows when the family actually moved out of the house, even though the murder took place in 1963. And you see the shape like turning the corner in the fog and in the moonlight. And the shape is walking. It's like, holy fuck, man. The cinematography is off the chain, as the kids say today. And Laurie gives, you know, the word as they're getting closer to the house. Laurie's like, now, babies, now. And they open the doors and they barrel roll out. And the Judith chick, you know, is about to do the same. And she grabs onto her and keeps her inside. And the car goes up onto the sidewalk, right into the front porch of the Myers house. Just crash right into the front porch. Woo! You know what I mean? And it's just right sitting in the front porch of the Myers house. Woo, 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 woo. You know, kind of horn, right? That's what you hear. And then in the distance you no, what's going on? You know, and the shape is just walking and there's no music now. It was like the crash of the accident takes out the music. So it's dun 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 dun, and it just stops and you just hear the horn. And then you look under the car and you can see that the car is leaking gasoline. So gasoline is leaking all over the place, right? It's all over the place. It's leaking. There's other engine liquid that's leaking as well. There's no fire yet or anything like that, but certainly it's leaking. And the shape, you know, within the moonlight, again, it's that nice low-key moonlight lighting, and the shape sort of walks up to the property and he looks at and he stops, and it's almost as if he has a moment like, that's my house. Do you know what I mean? It's like, what the fuck did you do to my house, bitch? No, he doesn't have that moment, but there's that moment where it's his home. And again, I don't want to play it too on the nose because that's not the shape's MO. But there's just a fleeting moment where you could perceive it as he recognizes the house. And there's this big fucking cop car right smashed into the porch and it's taken everything down. And the house was never lived in. The house never sold again. It's been sitting there, and, you know, over the years, people have, you know, thought about buying it, but it's fallen through and blah, blah, blah. And it's still there. It's just this old house that nobody ever wanted. And there's been multiple times over the years that it's been ready to be demolished, but it didn't happen, and whatever the case is, right? So, but now, like, some of the porch is kind of like fallen away because the big cop car is there, and Myers goes to the side of the car and he opens the passenger side to get the young girl, and the girl's gone. And then the camera goes like this up to the driver's seat and Laurie's gone. And then the shape just kind of, you know, turns his head like this, right? And he starts to walk around the other side of the car, but you can see that his boots are walking and stepping in the gasoline. And the horn is going, meh, and then there's like a spark, and just kind of stops, right? But the shape is walking all around the car and he's stepping into the gasoline, and then he walks into the house. Now, the front of the house, there's a big hole in the front of the house because there's a police car there. So he walks in and everything is quiet. and you just hear the elements, you know, the wind outside, a couple of leaves blow through the gaping hole that the cop car has left. You see Tommy and Karen and Allison sort of, you know, slowly emerging from the bushes and the sidewalk where they kind of rolled into, and they've gotten out and they've come to the front lawn, kind of like, what the fuck is going on? Like, you know, is everything okay, right? You know what I mean? And the shape is in the lower portion of the house, right next to the stairs. And it's like, oh my God, like this is the house. And the moonlight is shining through all the glassless windows, right? Because all the windows don't have any windows in them, right? They're just holes. So the moonlight is shining through. It's very dimly lit, right? And then you begin to hear Laurie's voice from a distance, okay? And you can hear it really well because there's no furniture in the house. And when you don't have anything in a room or in a space, you can really hear your voice. There's quite the echo, right? So now the echo's not like ridiculous, but certainly you can tell that she's in the house, she's in that space, and you hear her begin by saying something like, "You took them away from me," you know, and the shape just stops and turns his head like this, you know, just that moonlight ever so softly, you know, falling upon his mask, and you hear her again say, "You took my friends away from me, Michael," you know, and it's like, oh my God, what the fuck? You know what I mean? And the shape is just kind of turning like this. Now for the viewer, it's like, oh my God, I know what she's talking about. For the shape, he might not know what the fuck she's talking about. He might not know. He might not have stopped and turned his head because he's going, oh yeah. No, not at all. He's probably stopped and turned his head because he's trying to pay attention to where the fuck the voice is coming from. You could totally perceive it that way. So the ambiguity of whether or not the shape truly understands who this person is and what is going on must at some level remain ambiguous. There are certain things that you can point to and say, oh, I think he's getting it there. I think he knows it there, but you always have to remain true to the character and whether or not he is understanding that or he's just going through the motions, right? And you know, what exactly she's saying, I'm not sure, but it's things like that. You know, you took my friends away from me. I've waited 40 years for this moment, Michael. You know, blah, 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 blah. Like all that kind of shit. It's like, oh my God, she's telling a little bit of that story within a few sentences of dialogue. And the shape starts walking up the stairs that he walked up 40 years earlier in the clown costume to kill his older sister, Judith. He's walking up those stairs and we see the moonlight falling upon him as he's walking up the stairs, and you hear Laurie's voice in the distance, you know, reciting those, you know, types of things. It's like, oh my God, I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it. And the shape gets to the top of the stairs and he turns to his right and he's looking at the door of Judith's bedroom. It's open just ajar, right? Now remember, this is an abandoned house. It's been abandoned. I mean, it was abandoned in 1978. So this place has been abandoned for, who knows, maybe even 50 years. I mean, it's been a long time since anybody has lived in there. So there's no furniture. It's not like he's going to open the door and see a desk with a mirror and somebody sitting there. No. It's all gone. There's no furniture in there whatsoever, and there's no flashbacks that he's having. We don't do any of that shit. That's too cheesy for the shape. But he's there, and he's looking at this door, and he can hear Laurie's voice coming from somewhere, and he walks to the bedroom, and he opens the door, and the door slowly opens like this, and he steps just inside the doorway, and standing in front of him in the center of the room is that Judith lookalike girl, and she's standing there alone, and Michael just steps inside, and the girl says, "Hello, Michael," and he goes like this, and there's a fleeting moment where you hear the original Judith, the real Judith from 1978 go, "Michael," just very fleetingly and quiet. You know what I mean? It's almost like, is he having a memory? Does the shape have a memory? Is it the walls that are talking? Not literally, okay? This is all symbolism here, folks. And it's like, what does it mean? And he goes like this, and it's like, oh my God, That's the room. That's Judith Meyer's room. This is where it all began, and the shape is standing there for the first time in at least 40 years, right? Who knows, when he was in the house, when Laurie came up onto the porch to put the key under the mat in 1978, he may have gone up to that bedroom, we don't know. So it's at least 40 years, the first time he's been there in 40 years, maybe since 1963 when it happened. Who the fuck knows, right? So he's standing there in the room, and, you know, the camera's panning the room, and it's like, oh my God. And then all of a sudden, out from behind the door comes Laurie, and she leaps onto his back and jams a knife that she probably had hooked to her ankle, right into the neck of the shape, and you see blood just kind of squirt from the shape's neck. It's like, holy shit, did she just hit his jugular? What the fuck, right? And they're struggling like this and backing into walls, and the shape is doing this, and Laurie is fighting with every fucking thing she's got. And the two of them back out of the room, right up against the railing. They go crashing through the railing splits apart, and both of them fall all the way down right on top of the roof of the police car. Because if you remember, you know, the police car came crashing through the front porch, right through the front door, right? And if you've ever been to the Myers house in Pasadena, California, and peered through, you know, the front window, or if you remember the, you know, the beginning of the 1978 movie, the front door is not that far away from the beginning of the steps, right? You know, where the main stairs are. So, like, the cop car is like right there, and they come crashing right on top of the roof, and Laurie sort of bounces off like this and hits the railing and hits the stairs, and the shape is just like on top of, you know, the hood, and that force, you know, ignites something underneath the car, like a spark or something, which ignites the entire gasoline all around the car. And now the car just goes whoa, like this, and the young teenager that looks like Judith rushes to the railing and looks over and sees Laurie lying there, presumably unconscious, and the shape on the roof of the police car, and flames just engulfing everywhere. And she's like, holy shit, like, she doesn't know what to do because the house is really old, right? So when you have wood that old, I mean, it's gonna go up like a shot. I mean, I could probably take my lighter to it, and, you know, and it would go up, right? So the girl is just like, oh my God, and the glow is on her face, you know, and she looks so much like Judith. It's like, holy shit. And she backs up and she races into Judith's room, right? And she goes to the window, and flames are starting to kind of creep up the stairs. It's like, oh my God, like, this chick's in trouble. So she goes through Judith's window, and now at this point, everybody, you know, in the neighborhood within close proximity has started to pour out onto the street because they heard the massive explosion. They heard the car crashing, you know, into the front porch, and they're all like, what the fuck is going on down at the Myers house? So it's almost like, you know, the town of Haddonfield is starting to kind of pour into the streets. I don't mean like thousands of people. I just mean symbolically, like, you know, there's some of the residents are starting to kind of, you know, file into the streets to figure out what the hell is going on here, right? And they see this teenage girl climbing out of Judith's bedroom window who looks like Judith Myers, and there's like kind of flames, like a glow behind her, and she's climbing onto the roof, and she slides off the roof, and she falls onto the front lawn and sort of rolls into some, you know, people. They're like, oh my God, you know, are you okay kind of thing, right? And we cut back inside the house, you know, and all you hear is just the flames, because the entire front end of the house, inside the front there by the police car and the stairs and, you know, the living room off to the right and all that shit is just engulfed in flames. And Laurie is sort of lying on the stairs, but the stairs have been broken, so it's kind of like this, so she's kind of lying in here a bit, so she doesn't want to roll too far forward or she'd fall kind of, I don't know, into the basement or whatever the hell it is, right? But she's lying like right there on the stairs, and the shape is down here, still on the roof of the police car, and you can see he's all in flames. He's just engrossed in flames, and Laurie is covered in gasoline, and she sort of wakes up, you know, and she can hear her granddaughter and her daughter, Mom, Grandma, you know, and Tommy's like, Laurie, are you there? Like, you know, you can hear them, they're there, right? You know, and the townspeople are all, you know, huddled around, and Laurie sort of gets up like this, and she's trying to get to her feet, and her face is just covered in gasoline, and she's got, like, you know, dirt all over her hands and everything, and then all of a sudden, the shape on top of the police car, engulfed in flames, does the Myers sit-up. That's right, he goes like this, he's on the roof, and he just goes like this, and he sits up like this, and he's completely engulfed in flames. He's there like this, and he just turns, and he looks at Laurie like this, and his face is all in flames. It's, oh my God, it's iconic. It would go down as iconic. And Laurie, like, her eyes widen like this, and you can see the glow from the flames on her face, and he's just sitting there on top of the police car, not like this, okay? He's sitting there like this on the roof, completely that awesome Myers stiff, you know, very methodic turn, but he's all in flames, and it's just like, oh shit, get out of here, are you kidding me? So Laurie gets up, and she can't go down there because there's too much fire, so she climbs backwards up the stairs, and the shape just slides off the roof and stands up like this and starts climbing up the stairs, like he's going up the stairs, and Laurie is crawling on her hands and knees, and she crawls around the corner, and the shape is reaching for her leg, but she's got to be careful because she's soaked in gasoline, right? So she goes around the corner, and she crawls into Judith's room, and the shape, you know, is he steps over the large sort of gap there, and he's climbing up the stairs. He turns the corner, and Laurie, who's now crawled into Judith's room, she's at the back of the room, and she stands to her feet. So she's standing at the back of the room, kind of in the area where maybe Judith might have been sitting. I'm not quite sure, but sort of in that area away from the door, and she's just covered in gasoline, and she's dirty with kind of soot all over her face, right? And she's standing there at the back of the room, and the shape comes around the corner, and he stands in the doorway, and he's just in flames. And just the look of that, the contrast, just be iconic. And he walks into the room, right? And he steps inside, and Laurie is looking at the shape's neck, because there's the knife. Her knife is still there. And you can tell that he's beginning to lose blood pressure because he's becoming a bit weaker, right? And you can sort of see that in his movements, not to mention that he's engulfed in fucking flames. But in order for it to actually kill him, to actually really take him down, she knows that she's got to remove that. She's got to remove that and let the blood flow, baby. You know what I mean? So she just stands there, and they're looking at each other, and there's this moment, you hear the screams outside, Mom, Mom, Grandma, Grandma, and the music, dun, 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 or whatever it is, dun, 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 ding, 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 whatever iconic Carpenter score is happening during that moment. And Laurie just looks at, you know, the shape, and the shape just looks at Laurie, and Laurie just runs across the room, and the shape steps forward, and they sort of meet kind of in the middle, and Laurie just grabs onto the shape. She sacrifices herself because she knows that as soon as she hugs the shape, she's gonna go up like a Christmas tree. I mean, she's going to ignite herself, and that's exactly what happens. She grabs onto the shape, and she grabs onto the knife, and she pulls the knife from the shape's neck, and you see the blood just starts splurting everywhere, but Laurie goes up in flames. Her hair catches fire, and her back catches fire, right? And she's screaming at the top of her lungs because of the pain, and the two of them are wrestling and, you know, jostling with each other right there in the center of the room in flames. And the flames are now hitting the ceiling of Judith's room, and everybody outside, Tommy and Karen and Allison and, you know, the town residents that have filed, you know, onto the street, are all watching the house just go up in flames. And it's like, you know, and you hear, Mom, Mom, Grandma, Laurie, you know, whatever it is, and they're trying to kind of get onto the porch, but the flames are pushing them back, and this gigantic explosion of fire comes out of Judith's bedroom window, because as you know, fire looks for oxygen, right? So you just see it go whoa, like this right out the window, and everybody is sort of, you know, taken back by it. And it's like, holy shit, and the flames are engulfing the entire room, and Michael and Laurie are fighting with each other, and Michael, you can see him kind of losing a lot of blood. You can see blood splattering all over the wall and the floor and shit like that, and Laurie just grabs onto him and kind of spins him around and falls on top of him. Not really throws him to the ground, but sort of just in the jostling, she falls on top of him, and the shape hits the ground on his back, and Laurie is on top of him, but they're just in flames. Like, it's too late. I mean, there's no way, even if you were able to somehow put out the flames on Laurie, she would be forever deformed for the rest of her life. And I'm not trying to, you know, be insensitive when I say that. It's just that's the catastrophic nature for which this situation is. She's dying, but she knew that she needed to do this in order to almost fulfill her destiny. she's come to terms with it. Look, she's not the same woman she was 40 years ago. We've seen that in Halloween 2018, right? How often have you heard me say, even in this video, she doesn't, she's seen shit, she no longer gives a shit, she's been through shit. I mean, she's a completely different person, and she no longer wants to feel the pain that she's felt, and she feels that this is her destiny. She thinks back to that moment, like I've been saying, in the classroom, looking out the window, seeing the shape on the other side of the station wagon. The teacher is talking about fate and all that kind of stuff, right? The very first time that Myers sees Laurie is at the Myers house when she comes up to put the key under the mat, right? Do you know what I mean? As she's walking along the sidewalk, what's she singing? I wish I had you all alone, just the two of us. This ending here in the movie, The Shape, brings whole new meaning to that. It's eerie. It's almost foreshadowing this moment unbeknownst to her. There's no doubt she was, that's a made-up song to begin with, but within the narrative, there's no doubt that this 17-year-old girl was probably singing a song about a guy that she liked, right? She was singing it because she probably had a crush on Ben Tramer, and she was kind of thinking of him when she was singing that song. And of course, absolutely. But the symbolism and how it connects and relates on a much deeper level makes so much sense. So that's why she does that. Listen, I know some of you might be thinking, yeah, but he burned at the end of Halloween 2, 1981. He burns at the end of Halloween 2018. He was even burning at the end of Halloween Resurrection. Why are we using fire again? Okay, well, first of all, I'm playing within the confines of the narrative. Halloween 281 doesn't exist. Halloween Resurrection doesn't exist, okay? So technically, he's only been burned once, all right? And that was at the end of Halloween 2018. But the reason why I'm utilizing the fire again is because of the symbolic nature for what it represents. The first time she tried to do it, it didn't work because she wasn't there. And it was in her house. She realized that in order for the destiny, for her destiny and Michael's destiny to be complete, in order for the fate to be complete, it must happen where the evil began. And not just where the evil began in terms of the location and the house, but in Judith Myers' bedroom, because that is specifically where the evil began. That was his first murder. And that's where he needed to be taken down. And as soon as she saw that this young girl looked almost identical to Judith Myers, Laurie got even more crazy and thought, you know what, I can use her as bait to lure Michael to his house because he's going to recognize her. It's a connection to his past. And if there's anything within him, if there is anything at all, that maybe she can use this young girl. Now, did Michael actually, sacrifice this young girl because she looked like his sister Judith and just walked away and decided not to kill her? We'll never know. Even that young girl doesn't know that. She doesn't know how she survived or why she survived, right? And Laurie will never know that either. But she seized the opportunity. She took it upon herself to seize that opportunity because she realized that in order for the circle to be complete, this is what she must do. But she wasn't a part of it. She needed to be a part of it. She didn't realize that, oh my God, I have to sacrifice myself. I am just as much a part of this end as he is, okay? And it was in her house. Now we've gone to his house and she's a part of it, right? She realizes that she needs to be there. She sacrifices herself to save herself from any continued pain. She sacrifices herself to save her family. She sacrifices herself to save Haddonfield. And she does it because she realizes that this may have been her destiny all along. And when you go back to the first movie and the 2018 film and you watch them all in sequence, you think, oh my God, like the clues are there. She's come to terms with this. She's a different woman now. So they fall onto the ground, like I said, they're in flames. Everything is all around, like all the fires around them. The wood is creaking and cracking and the roof is starting to cave in and collapse, all around them. And they are just like, they're not even recognizable now. Like it just looks like a lump of something burning, but there's blood all around and the shape is just slumped there. Like you can tell that, oh my God, is this it? Like and you can see the flames within his mask, like at the end of Halloween 2, 1981. That's a whole other thing. But you see that, right? And the camera begins to slowly move back from them, okay? And it's almost as if the entire movie slows down. It gets quieter. Not quieter where the audio track is muted, but the audio track in terms of the sound effects and the flames and the fire and the Laurie, what's it just kind of becomes a bit muted, right? As if the movie, slows right down in some sort of just very subtle slow motion, and we're pulling back, the camera is pulling back, and we go through the window, through the bedroom window of Judith Myers out into the night, and we're looking at the flames of the house, and we keep pulling back, and we're pulling back, and we can see Tommy yelling for her, trying to get inside, and we see Karen and Allison and that, that teenage girl who's emerged from the bushes. She's kind of there as well, and there's people consoling her, and the town has come out, and we just keep pulling back, and the house is just up in flames, this glow, because remember, the power is out, so you can really see it, but everything is slowed down, and at that moment, you begin to hear Dr. Loomis. You begin to hear the dialogue from Dr. Loomis from the 1978 film. You hear, "I met this 6-year-old child with this blank, pale, emotionless face, and the blackest eyes, the devil's eyes. I spent 8 years trying to reach him, and then another 7 trying to keep him locked up, because I realized that what was living behind that boy's eyes was purely and simply evil." And we hear that as we're pulling away, watching the fire engulf the Myers house. So then we cut to black, and we give the audience, the viewers, some much needed breathing room, because the last 5, 6, maybe even 7 minutes of the movie has been really intense. So we cut to black, everything falls quiet, and we give the audience and the viewers about maybe 5, 6, 7 seconds of blackness, right? But then you start to hear, some wind, and you start to hear the rustling of some leaves. And then on the screen, you see 1 year later. So now it's October 31st, 2019, and we cut in, and it's a cloudy, gray, overcast Halloween day, and the camera is moving along like this. So it's probably on a dolly track, right? And it's moving along, and it's very smooth, and it's following this sidewalk with some homes, in the background. And it's the same shot from the original 78 film when we followed Laurie along the sidewalk, and she gets to the curbside and meets Tommy running up, like this, "Laurie!" Right? It's that same shot. But instead, who walks into frame? Tommy Doyle. And Tommy Doyle is walking along the same path that Laurie did 40 years earlier. And he's got his hands in his pocket, and he's got his fall kind of, jacket on, maybe a bit of a scarf or something around his neck. And he's walking along, and he gets to that same curbside and starts crossing the street, right? And then, of course, we know what's going to be coming into frame next, or what should be coming into frame next, which is the Myers house. But unfortunately, the Myers house is gone. It burned to the ground, and we see that. It's a beautiful tracking shot, and he walks, up onto the other curb, and he starts walking, and it's gone. The Myers house is gone. It's just this empty lot, and maybe the house next to it is also gone because it was taken down by collateral damage because of the fire, right? And he walks, and he stops, and he stands there in front of the house. And it's so poetic because he was standing there watching Laurie Strode in 1978 walk up the steps and put the key under the Myers mat, right? Or under the mat at the Myers house, I mean. So, and there's Tommy, 52 years old now. Brian Andrews standing there as the wind blows across his face and the leaves kind of, rustle in the background, and he's staring at this empty lot. It's gone. She's gone. It's gone. And then a car pulls up behind him, and it's Karen and Allison. And Allison rolls down the passenger side window and says, "Hey, there you are. We were looking for you." And Tommy's like, "Oh, yeah, sorry. I had to come and see it today. I really miss her." Because that's where Laurie died, was right there. And Allison, says to Tommy, "Well, we have a spot we can go now," right? So whether they were actually able to salvage her body or not, who knows? But they have a gravestone, a headstone for her, where they can go in one of the cemeteries in Haddonfield. So Tommy turns around, gets inside the car, gets in the, in the back seat, and he says, "Is Sandy going to meet us there?" And Karen's like, "Yeah, she's probably already there now." And Tommy's like, I really like her. That was a really nice thing you did. And Karen says, well, Allison's always wanted a sister. I guess she kind of now has one, right? And that's alluding to the fact that, I mean, maybe they haven't, I mean, obviously Sandy is the name of the Judith girl. And I'm calling her Sandy because it's in honor of the actress that played the original Judith Myers in the 1978 film, Sandy Johnson. And I think that's a nice sort of touch. I mean, it's not that Karen has officially adopted Sandy because Sandy's, almost 18. But certainly Sandy, the impression is given that because Sandy lost her entire family, she has now been, at the very least, unofficially adopted by Karen and is living with them now. And so the car drives away from where the Myers house used to be, down the road, and the camera pulls back as we see the car driving off into the distance, and you see the tree swaying back and forth, and the autumn leaves blowing across, the road on this fall overcast sort of day, and then the camera sort of pans over like this, and pans over right onto the empty lot of where the Myers house used to be, and it pulls back, and pulls back, and pulls back, and continues to pull back, and you see sort of the town of Haddonfield and this empty space of where the house used to be, and the trees are blowing and the leaves are blowing, and it's an overcast day, and it just gets higher and higher and higher, and you see that little, space there, and then it just cuts to black. But before the credits roll, you hear Dr. Loomis one last time, and it's a line that you heard him say in the TV cut of Halloween, which isn't officially canon, by the way, but I am going to, and it wasn't officially canon even before the Halloween 2018 film, but I'm going to take one line from that TV cut and make it canon, make it something that maybe he said that is unbeknownst to people in this new timeline. But I'm taking one line that is going to plant the seed of doubt in the viewer's mind. It's going to plant the seed of doubt in the audience's mind, and that's what we want to do. There's no breathing, there's no eyes, suddenly opening, or a hand coming out of a grave. It's nothing cheesy and cliche like that. It's just more planting just a little bit of doubt. You heard what Dr. Loomis said there with that dialogue, and then you hear him say, as it cuts to black, you hear, "You fooled them, haven't you, Michael? But not me." And the credits roll. And that's it. We never make another movie. We never allude to Michael being alive, literally. We just plant the philosophical seed of doubt in the audience's mind that maybe, somehow, but what does that line really mean? It's more philosophical than literal, that evil in all forms will always live on. There will always be another Michael somewhere. Do you know what I mean? That's what I'm alluding to there, that you think you fooled them, haven't you, Michael? But not me. You could say, you think you fooled them, haven't you, evil? But not me. Like evil will live on, and that is the end of the movie. But when you say it literally like that, you start to plant that seed of doubt in viewers' minds, like, oh, it's like, what? But you never make another movie. Now, again, maybe when I think about this a bit more, I might be like, no, you know what? Maybe it won't be that line. Maybe it'll be this line, and maybe I'll say this or whatever. But this is just the basic premise and idea. That's what this video was about, right? It's like writing a screenplay that ends up being 180 pages long. Well, no screenplay is 180 pages long unless you're doing a massive epic Lord of the Rings or something like that, but I don't even think their, screenplays were that long. But what it is that you get everything down on paper, and then you start to weed through and pick apart and go, okay, now let's take that out, let's flesh that out. That's what this is, right? So that is my idea for The Shape, the movie, the Halloween film to end Halloween as we know it, okay? The story of Laurie Strode and Michael Myers as we know it, connected to the 1978 film. That, I think, again, there's a lot of things that I could still continue to flesh out, but that is sort of my idea of where I'm coming from. So my name's Dave McRae. What I want you guys to do, if you're still with me after this long video, comment below and let me know your thoughts. start to sort of think about what I've said and my ideas and let me know your ideas in the comments section. Sort of, take what I've done and maybe add to it or go, oh, that was cool, Dave, but what about this? Oh, you know what, Dave? I like what you're, where you're going there, but what about this? Maybe instead of that, we do this. And I'll be like, oh, fuck yeah, that's so. This is your opportunity to kind of add to what I've done here and what I've laid out here. I would really like to know your thoughts. I think this is going to be very fun, very interactive. I want you guys to start talking to each other down below, sharing ideas, sharing thoughts of how you would end Halloween as we know it. Woo! My name's Dave McRae. If you want to follow me on Facebook, you can at facebook.com/manythingsdavemcrae. That's where I tend to post in the meantime and in between time, but I'm not posting here. All the links are in the description, as well as my link to Instagram. I am now on Instagram. All the links are down there. Click them till your heart's content, and when your heart is content, click them again. Anyways, I gotta get out of here now. Holy snapping crap. You think you fooled them, haven't you? But not me.